So just don't mind me if I don't want to change my ring that's in there. I can tell you, I have.
Brian.
I don't know why, but I'm expecting someone to pull funds with us next year.
Woo! That was for you to run up here, Alvin Moore. Good evening. It is now 5 p.m. and I will call to order the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board meeting. Secretary, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Musich.
Present.
Commissioner Menz.
Present.
Commissioner Alper.
Present.
Commissioner Abene.
Present.
President Pro Tem Smith.
Here.
President Forney is absent. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. May I have a motion for the approval of the minutes?
I'll move the minutes from February 1st, 2023.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Awesome. We have no reports of officers today. Do we have any reports from the appointees of outside boards and commissions? All right, Commissioner Alper.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to let you all know that an update from the Planning Commission. There's a land use rezoning study that's happening right now, and there's a website online where you can go check it out. And they have a new park zoning, and Assistant Superintendent Michael Schroeder and I have been in touch to talk about what that means and to provide feedback to city planners. But I do want to let the general public know that there is going to be a public hearing on March 20th about these new land uses. Last time the code was changed to this extent was in 1999, so this is a pretty big deal. And they are extending the public comment period by another 30 days. So let people know. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you. Commissioner Abeni?
Thank you, President Pro Tem Smith. I had an audit committee meeting on February 6th. At that meeting, and I've talked about that a couple of times, due to the new government structure, there's been a restructuring of the audit committee, and it's going to have a whole new branch, and now it needs a whole new leader in a role called city auditor. And so Ryan Patrick was the director, and he competed and was appointed into that position, and he's rapidly filling the vacant spots in that new organization. And so that was really the main discussion point in the meeting. And then the other thing is I was supposed to have a BET meeting, but it was canceled. And I also just want to remind people that those are now available to watch online, and there's online you can see when the next one is. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Musich?
Thank you very much. I actually have a question about the Planning Commission updates to code. And I'm wondering if we're going to be submitting a letter during the comment period on the changes to park zoning, and if there's any proposed changes to the shoreland overlay districts that we should be thinking about as we're trying to ensure that water quality is prioritized in our zoning, city zoning. And maybe that's a question.
I think it might be a question for Assistant Superintendent Michael Schroeder, but also just to let you know that we are meeting with the city on March 3rd. I think it's so I hope that if need be, we would have time to submit a letter.
Okay.
President Pro Tem Smith and Commissioners, we will be submitting a letter, and I was challenged on the date, so I can't remember what it was, but we will be meeting with, I think it's Jason Winberg and Joe Bernard, to review the changes, make sure we understand the impacts, and we'll be able to convey those back to you.
Okay, and you'll cover not only the park zoning changes, but also anything that would impact water quality, like shoreland overlay? Fantastic, thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say I didn't write anything down, so I will be concise because I don't want wanted to speak out of turn. But last night at the Minneapolis Parks Foundation board meeting, we approved the strategic directions for the Parks Foundation, which is very robust in terms of fundraising and goals. And I would encourage everyone to look it up. It's very exciting for that organization as they seek to partner with us in the long term. Thanks.
Awesome. Moving right along, until we get to open time, can we move right on down to the consent business?
I move the consent items as a slate.
Second. All right, there we go. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Look at there, we breezing right through. Are there any reports of standing committees that folks need to update us on that we haven't addressed already? No? Como? Music.
This is actually the section where we start moving the items that came out of committee.
There we go.
Yep.
All right. Where are we?
On behalf of Admin Finance, I would love to move Resolution 2023-8, a resolution approving a lease agreement with DNA Wellness LLC, leasing commercial space at 1828 Marshall Street Northeast, Unit 14C, located within the Above the Falls Regional Park for a term of 6 months, effective March 1st of this year.
Second?
All those in favor?
Take 6 votes.
Oh,
So we need a
maybe
roll
have a
call.
roll call vote, Madam Secretary.
There's discussion?
Oh, are there, pardon me, forgive me for my haste of breezing us through the agenda. Are there any folks that want to have a discussion around Resolution 2023-8? Seeing none. Secretary Ringo, can you call the roll?
Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Menz.
Aye.
Commissioner Alper.
Aye.
Commissioner Abene.
Aye.
President Pro Tem Smith.
Aye.
President Forney is absent. You have 8 ayes, 1 absent.
Awesome, thank you.
Also, on behalf of Admin Finance, I would love to move Resolution 2023-12, a resolution approving a license agreement with Hennepin County for a storage room located at 2125 East Lake Street, adjacent to Market Square, a Minneapolis neighborhood park in the Corcoran neighborhood.
For this item, I apologize, I should know this. I will be abstaining from voting because this falls within my traditional job duties, so I will be abstaining. Any discussion around this item?
Also, Madam President, that this is in the nature of a lease. It's called a license, but I think it would be wise to take a roll call vote on this matter as well.
All right, we'll do that. Any discussion around this item? All right, we will take a roll call vote on this. Secretary Ringo, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Menz.
Aye.
Commissioner Alper.
Aye.
Commissioner Abene.
Aye.
President Pro Tem Smith has recused herself from this one. President Forney is absent. You have 7 ayes, 1 absent, 1 recusal.
Awesome.
Point of information. Would the lease agreements require 6 votes, even if only 8 of us were here? Is that the standard? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Moving right along here, we are going to go into, it's 5:09, so I maybe need a little bit of guidance of where I'm going.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business, thank you.
I can move the
Assistant-
resolution.
Oh, there we go.
I'll move Resolution 2023-27, resolution approving a construction cooperative agreement with Hennepin County related to the Osseo Road construction project adjacent to and within Victory Memorial Parkway Regional Trail.
Second?
Any discussion around this issue? All those in,
Yes.
oh,
Thompson's lights on.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you so much, President Pro Tem Smith. I would like to point out a couple things to my colleagues. I am sure this is unfinished business. I'm sure it's not going to get in the way, whatever I have to say. When this came around last March, I objected to it because I live right here. We were discussing with Parkways recently about how the current funding model has us, for every new piece of parkway we fix, it'll be 100 years before we touch it again. So using that as an idea, I know that this construction at Osseo Road is never going to be touched again in my lifetime, and it's not a great plan, and the neighborhood was not on board. I recognize I can't stop that. I'm stating this for the record, that I don't like this project. That being said, the other part I would like to state to my colleagues is we have embedded in here the price of the 2 trees, and given our Green Minneapolis initiative, and as we robustly look forward to how, with carbon offsets and credits, and how we look to renew our urban tree canopy and sustain it, I would like us to just mark, I believe it's about $2,500 per tree, what we value our trees at, and maybe we can look into that more deeply. I will not be supporting this, but I completely understand that I will not be getting in the way of Hennepin County with my objection. I just wanted to state that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Schaefer.
I just wanted to highlight that same comment that you just did about the calculation of the tree value, and that's something that we're doing along Hennepin Avenue right now with forestry as well, and so I really appreciate that addition into this particular proposal.
Thank you. Commissioner Mins.
Same mindset. Is that the first time we've done that, or is this the first time that it's happened? No. Okay. It's not standard practice.
Commissioner Musich.
Thank you. We regularly, as part of our agreements with other organizations that are doing construction that requires the removal of trees, bill those organizations for the trees that need to be removed so that we can then go in and replace them, hopefully with a lot more trees than were removed, to try to make up for the loss of canopy that the tree removal caused. So that would be a standard practice that the park board engages in during construction projects.
Commissioner Abini.
Thank you. I just wanted to, since we're talking about the trees, I had made a couple of notes about the trees. And to the comment about the value of trees, there are, I think, a couple of models out there I'm somewhat familiar with, it's not my area, but I've seen in my career. And I would guess that there are some models that have a much higher range. They can really cost a lot for the trees. So I think we should not be timid about how we value the trees. But I also wanted to just comment, I really actually liked what was negotiated by the staff on this agreement, not just the tree replacement itself, but the addition of the 100 new trees, and also the 2-year establishment period. That's really important. So that they're not going to just plant them and go. And also, actually, in that agreement, they'll be planted with our guidance and support. So I thank you for that. It's thoughtful. I think this whole board we agree on a lot of things, but particularly trees, I think. So thank you.
All right. Moving back to that, because I think we had a second. Did we get a second on that? All right. So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
All right, that moves forward. Moving right along, I think we have a presentation from Carrie Christensen for our Parks for All Comprehensive Plan implementation update, excuse me.
All right, good evening, President Pro Tem Smith, Board. So excited to be up here tonight to be sharing a tool that is tracking progress on Parks for All goals. So the Park Board's comprehensive plan that runs through 2036. We've been developing this tool over the last year or so with my amazing colleague Madeline, who will be giving us a tour of the new tool shortly. She's a data insights analyst for the park board. So here's, it's based, in the comprehensive plan and the promise to implement and measure this agency vision. So there's been all sorts of different ways that over the past year that the plan has been active, that we've been baking it into our work. You see it in your board resolutions, and with every meeting. We sort of operationalize the plan in lots and lots of different ways. We can dive into that maybe at another meeting, but there's this promise to actually track and tell the story of progress on the plan also that's written and shared in the comprehensive plan in chapter 3, which is focused on implementation and measurement. So we promise to look, to ground it in our budget setting, performance reviews, board actions, community engagement plans, funding and grants, hiring, travel and training requests. But then we also have these larger, the 9 goals, right? And so while we operationalize the plan by attaching our work to the strategies, we also can look at our role in the region and our progress on our goals in the context of the region, knowing that we play a role in these very lofty goals. Sometimes we play a small role, sometimes we play a large role. And so we've been building this tool out as a way of thinking about it through what we think it's called a results-based accountability framework. So again, kind of understanding our stake and power through the goals and our progress in the region on these very big and exciting and ambitious visions for our agency. So what is this? It's a dashboard. We're calling it our goals, our comprehensive plan goals dashboard. It's a landing page for community questions, so it won't just tell the story of the comprehensive plan, but we hope it'll be a really great tool for communications about all sorts of stories on our agency and our work. We hope that divisions, departments from across the agency will use it, commissioners to connect with constituents around topics and questions. It will accompany the annual report, so it's actually this live sort of data source to accompany more of a narrative style way of telling the story of our work every year. We'll come to the board and provide updates to you on it on an annual basis. It includes available data, and the site will evolve over time. So we did our best to use data that we have access to, either inside the agency or with partner agencies. We really wanted to build muscles around what we already have momentum with, or sort of double up on things like performance goals. So you'll see that when we give a tour. So that brings me to the next bullet, which is when applicable. It includes references to performance goals and kind of grounds the progress on these larger goals in our direct 4-year priorities for the agency and how we're measuring that. And then what's been really fun, I think, for us about this process is working across the agency to pull data, and all of these staff and divisions have been so great to work with, making data available and kind of creating this clearinghouse, and this dashboard of our story overall. And it's also mobile friendly. What the dashboard does not do, I think maybe I'll bounce down to the third bullet here, but it is not an open data portal. City of Minneapolis has an open data portal. This is a storytelling tool for us that's more curated around the goals. It does not track progress on individual strategies. That will happen in other ways, again, that we can cover at future meetings or we can touch on in more depth tonight. And it does not include specific targets on what we're trying to reach in most cases. All right, and without further ado, Madeline. I will also note that this is going live this week. We wanted to share it with you and give you a sneak peek, and then we'll be sending out an announcement to community on the launch of this. We're very excited, and it's been an amazing year of work for Madeline.
Yes, so I'm excited to kind of give you all a tour here. This is the landing page for the dashboard, and as you scroll through, kind of gives you just an overview that Carrie already shared, so we'll kind of just skip past that. And then it gets into the different goals that are all color-coded in coordinating with the document. And these squares show you the different kind of indicator questions that we are asking associated with goal 1 in this instance. And as you scroll down, you can kind of get a sense for what they kind of range in terms of the number of squares or questions that we have right now. Like goal 4 just has 2 at the moment, while goal 5 has 6. So they kind of vary just depending on what we were able to find data-wise. And then when you click into or click on Explore to see a little bit more about a particular question, it'll bring you to a page that has all of the individual dashboards for a particular goal. So I'm just going to run through an example for each of the goals to just give you kind of a sense of the variety. So for goal 1, here this one is looking at who and how many people are using our parks, and that's the indicator question. And then we have one, we call them metrics, but it's just the quantifiable thing that we can track that's tied to that particular question. So this one just has 1, and in this case, we were able to get data all the way back to 2007, so we were able to kind of show tracking over time. But in the case of some things, like this one, we only have data that we could kind of show consistently going back to 2019. And this one is the Lorry Index, which is also on our park board page, but is kind of just displayed in a little bit of a different way. Going to goal 3, this one is looking at diverting waste and looking at the types of waste that we have by the different types for a particular year. And you can kind of see we've had a bit of an intake since 2020 in yard waste in particular. Moving to goal 4, this one's looking at volunteers, the number of hours served over for our environmental and recreation volunteer programming for the last 2 years. This one is looking at how people are getting to parks, and this one is using some of the data that is gathered as part of the citywide survey. So we have 2 years that we were able to kind of look at for this to compare. And then for goal 6 here, this is the legacy of the public urban forest. So this is looking at the removals and replacements. And this is an example of one where we were able to add some performance goal language that you all had developed, looking at kind of the replacement of tree rate, increasing that over time. Goal 7, this is one where you can see there's 2 different metrics for this indicator question here. And then for goal 8, looking at our diversity of our workforce. For some of these dashboards that do span quite a few years, there is this slider that you can use to try to narrow in on a particular year. Because as we move through time, the bars are just going to get smaller and smaller. So wanting to kind of give you a smaller window as an option if you so choose. And then for goal 9, we have just one dashboard at the moment looking at the different revenue sources that are budgeted by the different types. So this is the brief tour, and then in terms of how you can get here after today, there's going to be 2 pages on the Park Board's public website where you'll be able to find this. So if you're on the main page and go to About Us, and then the Mission and Parks for All page, which we're on right here, there will be a link. We don't have it up yet, but there will be a link on this page. And then the Parks for All project page will also have a link under the Key Documents area. And then, yeah. So that is the tour.
So really, it's just a point of information. We're excited to launch it, but if there are any questions, we're happy to take them now, if there's time.
Commissioner Music.
Thank you very much. I guess I'm a little perplexed how it is that we are claiming we only have water quality data going back to 2019. I've been receiving a park water report card from the park board since at least, I'm going to say 2010. And I know that the watershed district has water quality data going back at least 30 years. They'd recently showed me a graph that's showing data back that far, so you can see an increase in water quality after we entered into the Clean Water Partnership and began implementing changes, and then it kind of plateaus, and now water quality is getting worse and worse and worse. So I'd love if we could explore additional data sources beyond whatever's currently feeding into the dashboard so that people can see that more nuanced picture of the positive impacts that changes have made, and then the ongoing need to continue to address those causes of poor water quality. And that's just
Commissioner
some
Musich,
feedback.
thank you. Great comment. Well, and I think we can dig into understanding, sometimes it's a matter of the format of the data, and while it might have been available in paper form, maybe there's a digital version that's only been available for so many years. In some cases, it's, there are many indicators within one goal too, and it will kind of paint a more complex story around the topics that they're referencing, but absolutely we'll dig deeper into that topic in specific to work with water resources staff on how to tell that story.
Great.
Any other thoughts?
Commissioner Musich, I may have misspoken slightly about the available data piece. I think to the point that Carrie made, a lot of it is we might have numbers, but we might not have a way to have it be kind of in the consistent format. So there might be, I don't want to speak to the water quality one specifically, but there might be a few cases where, aside from this one, where we might have numbers, but they might not all compare over the course of however long we've had the data. So I guess that's another factor too. But I think with this one in particular, we can look to expand the year that we're showing.
Okay, great. The Minnehaha Creek Watershed District likely would be able to provide you with data since they're creating charts using it. I'm sure it's in some sort of consumable format like an Excel spreadsheet.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Benny.
Thank you. This is great, and I actually like these kind of presentations a lot. Thank you. And you may have said this, but it looks like annual data. So what are you thinking for your cycle of updating it? Is kind of with the budget cycle, or if you could just describe that a little bit?
Thank you, Commissioner Musich, President Pro Tem Smith. We're anticipating having updates sort of dovetail with the annual report release. So while this year it's a little bit before the annual report, typically every year it'll be getting a refresh around that time, so it goes out as a compendium to the annual report.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Maybe you could give some examples of the areas that it's difficult to fit the data set into this particular format that you mentioned, Madeline, because I see some other areas that maybe have back data that's not necessarily included in, that maybe start in 2021, like volunteer hours. I know we have record before 2021. So how did you decide where to start, where to begin? And maybe that's an example of where the data set didn't fit into your format.
I can start. Thank you, Commissioner Schaefer, President Pro Tem Smith. We intended to start the data in 2021 when the comprehensive plan kicked off, right? So it was really to track progress for the agency across the 2021 to 2036. In some cases, the data was readily available and in a format that we could tell a longer story, sort of predating the comprehensive plan. So it really was sort of an opportunistic, this is an interesting arc. And while we may have other types of data sources, just our capacity and our goal was to try to get 2021 data. If you find it easily for other dates, that's great. I don't know if you have other insights.
No, I don't. Sorry.
Well, thank you. I really, it's amazing what you've built, Madeline. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, we have about 1 minute before open time, maybe a couple seconds. So I'll see if there's any. And while we're waiting on the sheet, I'll read the open time rules just to inform everyone, familiarize yourselves with them so that All right, we have two open time rules. Thanks to all of you who want to share your thoughts and ideas with us during open time. Before we start, I want to provide an abbreviated version of the open time board rules. All individuals wishing to speak may call in before noon the day of the meeting to be placed on the agenda, or can sign up at the board meeting prior to the start of open time. I will be calling on people in the order on the sign-up list only. Open time for public input shall not exceed a total of 15 minutes, with the time limits to be allotted by the president. Please watch for the timer, which is there to be considerate of others here to speak, and stay within your allotted time. During open time, public testimony will be given without debate, and only clarifying questions from the board will be allowed. Two types of items are not appropriate for open time in order to protect the privacy of all individuals. Those are pending litigations and personnel issues. Please refrain from commenting on specific personnel issues. We will not tolerate discriminatory and/or harassing words directed at anyone, so please ensure that all comments you make tonight comply with the policy. The board made this decision many years ago to operate under Robert's Rules of Order. Under Robert's Rules of Order, the ceding of time to another person is not allowed, so only those signed up to speak may only speak for their own allotted time. We also request that each speaker provide his or her name and address if they are comfortable. All right, so we'll go ahead and call up the first speaker, which is Carol Becker. Oh, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
My name is Carol Becker. I live at 3201 48th Avenue South. Monday morning at 7:23, I received an email from the Park Board's computer system, your email system, from Commissioner Becky Alper as a fundraiser request from her. Picture of her family. List of the things that she's done and why you should be donating to Commissioner Alper, as well as a request for a donation of $25. Along with this were the things that I would normally expect from a letter from a commissioner. There's Riverside Park improvements, a neighborhood day for camps. If you want to sign up for a public hearing on Riverside Park, all the things that I would typically expect from a commissioner email, not, however, a fundraiser. Now, Commissioner Alper had then, after I did send in a donation, the money was, a day later, we got an email back saying this was a mistake. Now, if you read this, you'll understand that, in fact, this was not a mistake, that the normal things that we would expect from the park board would be in this, and then a fundraising request and basically a little resume of why you should support her for future elections. The money was given back, but she still now has a list of people who are willing to donate to her, having used emails from the park board. My partner, my wonderful, sweet partner who does not get involved in politics, also got this email. So I don't know how many people who would not otherwise have been reached out to politically got this funding request. And she now has a list of people who have donated to her that she would not have otherwise gotten had she not used the park board resources. This is illegal according to state law. It's unethical to use government resources for political purposes. And so I am here today to, one, provide this. I know that the emails came from your system, so it isn't hard to find. But two, I'm going to provide this to your council. I'm here to request today that the park board take action. This was not an accident. This was not an oopsie. If you read this, you'll understand that this was deliberate to take the resources of the park board and use it for personal purposes. I'm asking that you censor her, and I'm asking that you take away committee assignments from her. This is not okay. This is not how you should function. This is not how a government entity should function. This is not okay. This is not okay. This is not okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have Chad Wolshwick, maybe not even close on the last name. If you are here. Chad W. Maybe Chad's in the restroom. Okay.
I do know that Chad was planning to come, but maybe he got delayed.
Okay.
So I don't know if he comes, I don't know how that works.
All right. I'm not sure how that works either, Billy. We'll defer to the experts. Oh, well, maybe if Chad shows up and you know this human.
Did he submit a written testimony at all? I wasn't sure. He communicated with me earlier today about figuring out how to get here for the meeting, so.
I would have to check to see if he's, sorry, President Pro Tem, Commissioner Menz, I would have to check to see if he's submitted written testimony. I don't think I've got those yet. if they
Point of
do.
inquiry,
But-
what is the name of this gentleman?
He's the owner of 1925 East River Road, which is a resolution on the planning committee agenda.
Did he sign up for open time or for on the resolution and planning committee?
He's
Open
on the
time.
speaker open time list. All right. What do you say?
I believe the proper procedure would be when if you want this individual to be able to speak again and you've closed your open time, you'll have to suspend board rules to then vote to add open time back on. So I think that would be the procedure you would use.
Point of clarification. If he shows up, would it be, is he allowed to speak towards the easement? Because I think that's what he really wanted to speak toward, which was on the,
It's on the planning meeting,
Yeah.
right? I don't know if there's discussion. is there?
I'm not sure if we have homeowners usually speak on that.
It's up to the discretion of the chair.
Okay.
Whether or not to allow someone to speak to an item that's not the presenter. Typically, we don't allow that because it results in chaos.
Okay.
All right, so, well, if you see Chad kind of rolling in, we'll make a motion to suspend the rules and give him a couple minutes to speak in lieu of this open time. Since there are currently no more in-person speakers for open time, we can close open time and move right along to, give me 1 second here. Where were we? Oh, we have some new business, and I think we have a presentation from Deputy Superintendent Ringel.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Smith and Commissioners. So we are starting tonight our 2023 Racial Equity Series of presentations. We plan to bring you one every month for the remainder of the year. This is similar to the request that was made of us last year around climate resiliency. And our intent through these presentations is to provide you with some context of what the organization is already doing and what we hope to be doing moving forward. Tonight's presentation is really to ground you in some of the things that are fundamental to our work, our racial equity work. And I wanted to begin with our mission statement because our mission statement is brand new. We've got Carrie in the audience here who helped navigate us through the change of that mission statement. But this mission statement actually takes the concept of racial equity and puts it into the foundation of who we are as an organization, especially in the second paragraph, dismantles historic inequities. That was the add to this mission, one of the adds to this mission statement in this last round. Similarly, from the comp plan, and again also on the wall behind us, there's a series of value statements, and one of the value statements is equitable. That helps continue to lift forward the concept of racial equity. And the comp plan also provides a racial equity definition for us. When race is no longer a predictor of access to parks and recreation, health, well-being, and quality of life, also provides the context of which the city of Minneapolis considers racial equity is the development of policies, practices, and strategic investments to reverse racial disparity trends eliminate institutional racism, and ensure that outcomes and opportunities for all people are no longer predictable by race. When we get beyond the kind of organizational direction and structure that guides us, then you might ask, well, who's coordinating this work within the organization? And this work has moved to a few different places within the organization, but it's currently being coordinated out of the Human Resources Department and out of the Deputy Superintendent's Office. We do have very new, just starting. President Forney has asked that there would be a commissioner work group for this, and that includes Commissioner Mentz and Commissioner Olson, Commissioner Forney, superintendent, and myself. And that group will be intended to help guide not only what we present in these series, but also to help think about what are the trainings and the other awarenesses that we bring forward to the board during this year. So who do we focus on with our racial equity work? And the size of these squares is not intended to talk about who's more important than somebody else, but it is more important to reflect who we've focused on the most so far in the work we've done to date. Our work to date has been primarily focused on park visitors and park staff, thinking both in terms of how we are serving the public, but how we are interacting with each other within our workspaces. And we have had some limited interaction with commissioners over time, various trainings. One of the things that has been a barrier in the work with the commissioners is doing trainings in the public setting. And so that is something we hope to work through this year and be able to provide some opportunities for you to do really good, solid training, but recognizing if we get 2 or more out of a committee or 4 or 5 or more of you from the full board, we actually have a quorum. So we have to do these things in the public setting. So we'll figure out a way to do that this year. So who have we collaborated with? What are some of the approaches that we use? We actually have a pretty good list of different folks, different organizations who we have worked with over the years. Government Alliance on Race and Equity, Parks and Power, Justice Leadership Solutions, the Hypatia Group, that's Vivian Nelson. You would have met her last January. Interaction Traction, that's Joelle Allen. You would have also met her early last year. And most currently, we're working with the YWCA in the Courageous Change Collective. They're leading a lot of the work that we're doing for staff across the organization. We do have several different approaches. This isn't comprehensive, but I wanted to really articulate that what we have found over time, perhaps a little bit by accident at times, is that there is no one way an individual really grasps the concept of racial equity consistently. Sometimes it's a very intellectual understanding, sometimes it's a very kind of emotional or kind of a visceral reaction component to it. Sometimes we go to a very high level of how do we change our ordinances, but there's many different ways that we have found over time to approach the work of racial equity within the organization. So Racial Equity 101, it's our intent for every employee to have Racial Equity 101, which is a day-and-a-half series, and we're looking at how we would then also have something shorter for our provisional staff. Internal influencers, we just launched a brand new charter with this group. This group started as about initially 70 staff, then grew to 140 staff through a little attrition. We're at about 100 right now, with the intent being to have 20% of our staff who are going through intensive regular touch points and trainings, and not only through dedicated actions, but also through everyday interactions, doing work around racial equity within the organization. Ordinance work, there's probably still some work to be done here, but with the last board, we actually did a dedicated review of all of our ordinances, looking at things that were obsolete, things that were intentionally biased at the time and are no longer appropriate for our use. So there's already some ordinance work we've done, as well as new ordinances we've put in place around, say, the MPP 20 ordinance, and looking at how we add equity into thinking about capital projects and other types of resource dedication. We will have a whole session on our racial equity action plan. That has been with us since 2016. We keep updating it. It is a kind of a guide for some of those bigger projects that we want to take on as an organization. And we spend, through many of our trainings, quite a bit of work on timelines. So we all have kind of our own interpretation of time and our own interpretation of the key events over time. And it's been really powerful as an organization in various size groups to have people layer in their experiences with the park system over that time and to get a greater sense of history that of not just from maybe one perspective, but the variety of perspectives that come into creating a system and sustaining a system like ours. That work will also probably feed into how we think about celebrating 140 plus years of this organization, making sure we're lifting up not just the common narrative that we've heard, but making sure we're really growing and increasing the narratives and bringing more voices into that conversation. And finally, cultural somatics. This, many of you may have read My Grandmother's Hands. You might be familiar with Resma Menachem. But Resma actually spent quite a bit of time with us, with the internal influencers, doing cultural somatic training with us. And it was this really interesting tie between psychological first aid and racism, and how racism can live in our bodies in ways that we don't even anticipate and that we react to without even knowing. And he has really some, obviously, I think world known probably at this point in some of his teachings and the way he does his work, but it was really profound for us. And that's where the cultural somatics, so you have, the kind of intellectual piece, and then you have how it shows up in your body. Sometimes things that you don't even know that are happening for you that are impacting how you react and how others react to you. We do have a web page dedicated to racial equity. I'll take you there just for one moment so you can see what you can find there, if I'm at all lucky in navigating into the web page from here. But on this page, what you will be able to find is our most current racial equity action plan. This is the first 4-year version of this document that we've had. And we've tried to align it at that 4-year time sequence that matches the strategic directions that you've put forward. And this is the first one that aligns with our new comprehensive plan. So we're pretty excited to have those alignments coming into place. If you go down to ordinances and criteria, if you ever want one single spot to go find where is that equity criteria that we use for capital, where is that equity criteria that we use for recreation center funding, this is where you can find those. If you're really curious and want to see our previous racial equity action plans and the updates that we did to those over time, they are there. There's some overarching information on park investments, but this is a great tool if you are going to a meeting and you want a talking point, or if you want to understand or share something with an individual about the work that we're doing. This is a great resource for you. Let's see if I can go back. Yep. And finally, I just want to give you a little taste of what we anticipate some of the future topics to do. There will be many different individuals who will come up throughout this time on various topics. We'll have everything from a dive into the Elwell law, which you hear a lot about in terms of a previous method for assessment that was used for acquisition and development of parks. We'll be looking at the Racial Equity Action Plan. We'll dive into those equity criteria and metrics. The comp plan really lifts up racial equity in a very meaningful way, so we'll look at the intersection there. So we'll have a great variety for you throughout the year. And with that, I'll take any questions. Or not.
No questions? All
right, thank you.
Commissioner Mins, you popped your light on.
I know President Forney's not here, but I'm really excited about the work to do in the commissioner work group. We had our first meeting, I guess it was a week or two ago. So we're going to be meeting bi-weekly, which is every 2 weeks. I don't know, bi-weekly could be a different form. I don't really know what that definition is necessarily. but every 2 weeks on Fridays. So I think that I'm really excited about focusing on this and figuring out what we've done in the past and where we can go forward. And side note, my wife just said, you need to download my grandmother's hands so that we can read it together. So double dipping.
Thank you. Commissioner Benny?
Thank you. I just wanted to say to the Deputy Superintendent, thank you for showing us the website as well. This is a general comment, but just everything I need to find, I can find on our website by Google. Thank you so much for that, Dawn and your team. And so I love the idea of having the resources right there. And maybe as, with the topic areas, as things are revealed, I think that's kind of what this maybe might be a little bit. We can make sure that we highlight those each time and after each topic and get them on that website as well. So like I said, I use that website all the time. I have a new colleague at work that's moved to the area where the missing link is from out of state, and I said, you know what, we're working on that missing link because he's a bicyclist. So anyway, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks. All right, moving right along, petitions and communications, and we're going to start down there with Commissioner Olson.
I will pass, thank you.
I'll pass as well.
I will just say that we have had some community meetings around North Commons, and those have been really fruitful, and I hope that they continue and continue to encourage everyone to get involved. Thank you.
I'll pass. Thanks. Yes, I just wanted to tell you all, take a moment. I was going to share my excitement about the $2.5 million grant from the Met Council, which is so exciting, and a couple other things about vandalism mitigation, the mural project. But I did want to just take a moment to assure you all that the email that I sent out this week, that it came from my campaign's personal server, and they represent the opinions of my campaign and myself and not of the park board. They're sent from MailChimp. These newsletters are truly a labor of love for me, and I do them because I think they provide information of value to others. I know how many of you, I know that for those of you who work on your own newsletters, how much effort these are and how challenging they are, especially if you don't work in communications as your full-time job. So I just want to tell you what happened. I used an old template and I updated the background information, and I thought it updated to the whole thing, and it didn't. So the good news is that I am working with a copy editor and with somebody who is able to assist me with these going forward, and I was able to remedy the situation. What our speaker tonight did not bring up is that I sent out another email the very next day, which was the earliest I could do because MailChimp has moving to a paid platform, and so the free version, which my campaign uses, as I'm sure many of you know who have your own newsletters, do not allow 2 emails in one day. So again, my apologies. This was an honest mistake, and I ask for forgiveness both from my fellow commissioners and staff and from the general public, and I assure you it won't happen again. Thanks.
I just want to give an update and say thank you to everyone who attended our first District 4 roundtable on January 19th. We had about 30 people, including leadership from the 13 neighborhoods in District 4, as well as the rec staff from all of the District 4 rec centers and their supervisors, Superintendent Bangora and myself. And we met together kind of for inter-neighborhood introductions. We had kind of a meet and greet time at the beginning. And then Superintendent Bangora spoke briefly to this group about his vision towards the parks. And rec staff, there's been a lot of turnover in District 4 rec staff, so they got a chance to really introduce themselves to the community leaders. And my favorite part of the evening was really hearing from each of the neighborhood leaderships and the friends groups and the nonprofits that are associated with our District 4 parks. And each one of them had about 5 minutes to share what their concerns were, their feedbacks, and their visions for the future, some of the things they were working on. And it was really the first time that many of them had met each other. And so it was really exciting for me to see the connections that were happening between various neighbors on opposite sides of the city, really for the purposes of leveraging our resources and leveraging our ideas to benefit the whole parks as a group, as we learn to, we have our individual projects, but we have a lot to give one another in neighborhood leadership. So that was really an exciting time, and I hope to use it as a springboard to facilitate deeper dive discussions around some of the topics that floated during that meeting. So thank you to Superintendent Bangor for making the time to come out to that. That was really meaningful to really everyone that was there, because we had some meet and greet time as well for people to interact directly with us. The rescheduled Luminary Loppet is this Saturday, so we're really excited about that. The after party has moved in location from the Lagoon Ice to the little soccer field that connects to the Midtown Greenway and at the south end of Lake of the Isles. So I know there was some discussion on if it was, I don't know what the latest is on that as far as the ice itself, but I know that the after party has moved location to the soccer field. And then lastly, March 10th is the last day to give feedback on the Cedar Isles Master Plan. That's it.
No, I don't need to put my light on, I guess. A couple of things. First of all, yes, it's like a panic attack trying to send out a newsletter, because you want to communicate with your constituents, but you always have to be perfect with it, it feels like. So I feel your frustration, Commissioner Alper. I did get a newsletter out finally this week, which was good. I've gotten a lot of feedback. I encourage you all to do it if you can. If you need help, let me know. A couple of good things. So I did get a lot of clarification from the Southeast Como neighborhood around the missing link in the history of that troubled pathway and finding a pathway. It looks like from the state we're going to be getting some money, so I'm going to really be diving into that issue as District 1 Commissioner over the next year, and I'm hoping that we can get something really solidly in place. One issue that came up was we've tried to acquire land along the river, but we've never really tried to specifically acquire land along the pathway, and maybe that's because we haven't really agreed on one, so that might be something that we look into. But really informative community meeting. The racial equity group, sorry. Oh, we're also working on trying to get the Witch's Hat opened more than once every decade, and working with Councilmember Wansley's office on that. And really, thank you to Steve Zimmer and Jerry Peterson for just right on the top of the hat getting the meeting together with the city. So hopefully we can move forward with figuring out our risk assessment on that and then getting that open. For those of you that don't know, we own the park, but the city owns the Witch's Tower. And fun fact, could be Bob Dylan's inspiration for All Along the Watchtower. A couple of things that I wanted to mention that are not as positive is I was really frustrated and upset to learn, and I haven't spoken to anybody about this, that when we went to negotiate with our umpires or our officials for rec sports, that we weren't able to give them $1 for the experience. And I'm really excited to see a lot of young people reffing and umpiring hockey games and basketball games. But for those of you that don't know, the people who umpire games or officiate games really make sure that it is fair. And that experience is extremely valuable. And a lot of those folks who do it in the park board are people of color who have done it for decades. And I really hope that we can re-examine that and maybe consider a little bit different rate for folks who are maybe mentoring younger officials, because that is a high need, and it's a really great place for us to kind of examine our equity work and keep that recreation programming really positive for folks. Lastly, I hope we get a rec superintendent soon. And please go to Powderhorn Park on Wednesday, the 22nd of April, to support and celebrate Black History Month. Frank White, who has worked with the park system for years around RBI baseball and softball, which, for those of you that don't know, it's reviving baseball in the inner city. And a friend of mine, Pete Gorton, who has also researched black baseball for years, has a chapter in that book. But I will be there. It's next Wednesday, the 22nd, and it also kicks off registration for softball and baseball seasons. Finally, I would be remiss to not, when I think about the equity work that we're doing, and then I hear from people in the community around our programming and the inequities that exist. So basketball on the north side is going to end very soon, but in some other parts of town, it's going to continue for longer, especially at the 6U and 8U levels. And I just want us to really examine our programming and how we can create spaces for consistency throughout the city. And I hear that a lot in my district around not only youth programming, but also other programming to make sure that we're providing opportunities in as many different spaces in the city as possible so that we can really, be as equitable as we can. And I'm not talking about equality. I'm talking about equity, like what do each community need? And I know that Superintendent Bangura is working with each individual recreation center director to really focus in on what those communities need. But just, I think we can do a little bit better. So thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks. For me, two things really, well, many things, but I got to go to the ribbon cutting for the Spark Studio over at Harrison, which was super cool. There were a bunch of small humans there, which I always enjoy, and got to witness young people just experiencing pure joy from having access to high quality equipment, new stuff, not, used. It's a space for them. And I think that when they finally got to get in, once they heard all of us adults kind of walk through what they were going to experience, just the sheer joy that they had in touching the equipment, hearing their voices, in a microphone in real time is totally different than how you think you sound. So it's always really funny to watch people hear themselves for the first time, like, oh, that's what I sound like. And there were these two little girls who were just really amazing. They were singing and rapping, and they were like not sure what they wanted to do, but they just knew they wanted to do music. And they didn't know any of the words to the songs that they picked, so even better for me, because I was just like, I don't know any of the words either, but I'll stand here and be like a cheerleader for the young people. So that was really cool, and I think it's just a great resource for that side of town, just being able for young people to have that experience. And the staff in the Spark Studio seem really amazing and in tune and really patient. Like, you have 15, 20 kids running around. Everybody wants to experience everything all at once, and so it's always exciting. So I feel really honored to be able to witness such a moment and be a part of that. So I'm really grateful, and I hope that it exceeds all of our expectations for the space, and that for sure that the community takes full advantage of what we can produce in that space. So that was really exciting. So thank you to the folks that pulled that off and all the hard work that went into that. And then I had a conversation separate of the Spark Studios, but with some folks from Major League Soccer, again, who I've connected originally with Michael Schroeder. So looking forward to whatever comes of that with Major League Soccer, supporting our pre-existing soccer fields or new fields with their resources that they have, not necessarily our resources, but how do we bring in new resources and get world-class facilities in our spaces. So that's always exciting. And as usual, I'm extremely grateful for frontline staff that serve our community day in and day out. I am not apologetic about being for staff and for our staff loving where they work and feeling like that they are supported. And so I'm thankful for all of the folks who come to work day in and day out when it's like 9 o'clock and you're ready to go home, but there's still a kid hanging out and you're waiting for a parent because they're running late from work. Thank you for your work each day. It's super important to me, and I appreciate it, and it doesn't go unnoticed. And then lastly, it is still Black History Month, so take some time and learn about the contributions of African Americans to the world. And on that, that is the end, but I'm going to go over to Secretary Ringel.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Smith. I wanted to let you know that the open time speaker who wasn't here before has arrived. So if the board wanted to consider allowing them to speak, you could suspend rules to do that.
All right. I think I need someone to make a motion to suspend the rules to allow,
Motion to suspend the rules.
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I believe we need a roll call vote because it requires a majority.
All right, JK, 2/3. Can we have a roll call vote, please, Secretary Ringel?
Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Musich,
Aye.
Commissioner Menz,
Aye.
Commissioner Elper,
Aye.
Commissioner Abene,
Aye.
President Pro Tem Smith,
Aye.
President Forney is absent. You have 8 ayes, 1 absent.
All right, the rules are suspended, and we'll invite Chad W.
I would make a motion to add
reopen.
open time to our agenda a second time for this evening.
Second?
All those in favor of the adding of open time for the second time?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. All right, we are now reopening, we're adding a new open time or reopening opening time for Chad W. to come up and share. And Chad, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you all. I apologize for being late. I talked to Ophelia today, and my understanding was I should be here at 6. But again, thank you. I apologize, and thank you for letting me have my time. So thank you for all you do for the parks. I've lived on East River Parkway for 15 years. Loved living there. I have some of the houses on the river. We have aquifers and sometimes high groundwater at certain times of the year. So I've had a lot issues with my sump pump turning on, and we put the water into the yard, and it makes the yard a mess. Sometimes it doesn't run a lot, like last year was a dry year, so it was fine. But at different times of the year, it runs a lot. Water goes out into the street. It doesn't get to the catch basin very well, which is part of the reason why East River Parkway in front of our house, my houses and a few others, has a lot of potholes. There's a lot of damage from water. So one of my friends lives in St. Paul, probably 500 yards down the road, and I were talking, and they said they had the same problem, but they hooked it into the storm sewer. They just hooked it up so it doesn't have to run in the street and into their yard. So I inquired with the city, and they said that yes, it was possible, but there were several requirements that needed to be met. So I worked closely with Jeremy Strelo, who's the engineer for the city, and tested the water, met all of the requirements. We were issued a permit to connect the sump pump to the storm sewer. However, before we got ready to do it, we were said, well, we were told you need to get a permit from the park board, and Mr. Strelo said have them just treat it like a sanitary sewer permit. We're basically digging a hole, connecting a 3-inch pipe, covering the hole. It won't be noticeable. But since I guess it is not done too often in Minneapolis, that's why we needed to come before the board to get permission. So I think it will improve the property, improve the neighborhood. I'm taking all responsibility and expense to have that done. I would just ask for permission to do that, and I will see that it's restored better than it was, and we'll leave the place. I'd like to leave the property better than I found it, and this is, I think, the right thing to do. Some neighbors I've heard let some of the water run into their floor drains. I mean, I don't want to do that because I don't want it to get into the sanitary sewer and overburden the water treatment system. So I think allowing it to go into the storm sewer is the best thing. and sometimes the catch basins get filled with leaves and overflow. So I think this solves a lot of problems, and it will preserve the road and make the neighborhood better. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. All right. Do I need to have a motion to close open time again? Just, okay, moving on. I think that is it. I'm going to adjourn the full board meeting and move right along to my friends on the planning committee.
All right, and with that, at 6:09, I'd like to call to order the Planning Committee. Secretary, could you take the roll, please?
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Co-Chair Abene.
Here.
Co-Chair Alper.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Could I take a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved?
All right, we have a motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes. Next, we have some minutes to approve. Can I get a motion?
I will move the minutes for August 3rd, 2022.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Minutes are approved. So with that, I would like to start by inviting staff, before I open I guess I would like to open the public hearing for the Riverside Park Preferred Concept Plan within the Mississippi Gorge Regional Park. What?
It's too early. It's got a time
nope,
certain of
it's too
6:30.
early. Yep. Okay, could we do the presentation first? That's really what I wanted. I'd like to invite staff to come, I believe, talk to us about the concept plan for Riverside Park.
All right. Good evening, co-chairs Abene and Alper and commissioners. I'm going to be presenting the preferred concept plan for Riverside Park. A little bit of background. The park sits within Mississippi Gorge Regional Park. It's still considered a neighborhood park. However, it is located within a regional park, similar to other small parks in regional parks. It is one of the oldest parks in Minneapolis. It was designed by H.W.S. Cleveland and implemented or first developed in 1885. This project builds on the regional park planning of 2019. So we spent a little over a year and a half doing master planning for the regional park, and this park was a part of that. And one of the top items, there's several that I'll go through here in a minute, but one of the top items that we heard regarding Riverside Park specifically was to reconnect the upper park to the lower park, which is now known as Annie Young Meadow, along the parkway there. So there's a bluff that separates the two levels. It's probably about a 45 or so foot drop between the two. So the previous planning, like I said, we did some planning in 2019. These are the recommendations that were approved by the board that were created from the CAC, that Community Advisory Committee, for that regional park project. The top items, looks like there's 5 of them. The top one was including pollinators, going from 1 full-size basketball court to 2 full-size basketball courts. Also renovating the existing restroom building. The mid-level terrace or nature picnic area between the 2 levels, again, kind of linking the two parks, the 2 park spaces. And then restoring the staircase to Annie Young Meadow. There's a 1930s WPA era stone staircase that kind of traverses down the slope to Annie Young Meadow there. So this project really focuses on kind of digging in deeper into the planning process of 2019 and better connecting with neighbors on some of those details. So the existing conditions out there, the pool is actually 91 years old, which is kind of remarkable that it's still level and functioning, which is it's pretty cool. But it is old. It could use some work for sure. The restroom building's about as old, at 90 years old. It's beautifully designed. It's got a great nice curve to it, cedar shake roof. However, it's not ADA accessible. It also needs quite a bit of roof work as well as filling in holes in the siding, et cetera. And that is not going to be a part of this project or this funding. That work would be done with separate funding. The play area, about 22 years old. It is faded and out of date. It does need to be replaced. The containers are made of sand, which is not desirable for us and not our current standard. There's no park shelter, so there's no shade, or excuse me, there's no roofed shelter building out there besides the restroom building. The volleyball courts, they're no longer usable. They're pretty much all grass with a couple kind of bent poles. You can kind of see it down there in the corner there. Look a little shabby. And then ADA access to the park is limited. So getting into the park from the street, there's no parking lot for one thing. So limited ADA parking stalls, but access from the street sidewalks, it is a little bit of a slope. And then there's some poor pavement kind of further limiting access. The basketball court was recently resurfaced by Asset Management. They did a fantastic job on that. Looks great. There's several huge oaks. This park it's like I said, it's pretty ancient, and so are the trees, and they're pretty gorgeous. There is quite a bit of buckthorn that's growing over the bluff, kind of creating a woodland area. Originally, it was simply park trees planted with no real understory, so you can actually see further down through the park. But buckthorn and other invasives like garlic mustard and other things are kind of taking over and really kind of ruining the visual connection between the two parks and a sense of connection to the river. The irrigated soccer field and the dog park that are within Riverside Park are not going to be impacted by this project. They're functioning pretty well. So community engagement. We hosted 2 open houses, one at Brian Coyle Neighborhood Center. We had about 30 attendees. And at that meeting, we really focused on establishing priorities for the recommendations of the 2019 planning effort. And then the second meeting was held at Seward Towers East. The photo there is of that meeting there. There's about 25 attendees, and we presented 2 concepts and got some great feedback on those. And then we hosted 3 surveys, the last indicating a good majority of folks say that we're on the right track. I believe it was 22 out of 26 or so surveys had said that we're on the right track. Comments to the final survey said that they really loved it. Excited to have the bluff area cleaned up, more accessible, pollinator additions. There was also a comment about adding pickleball court, or there's several comments about adding pickleball courts. They must have gotten wind of this comment period and added a few thoughts there. And I can talk about that a little bit later on the slideshow. And then just saying thank you and talking about multi-sport court, which could be kind of painted over one of the basketball courts. All kind of achievable things. There's really no negative feedback through community engagement. Most people were pretty darn excited. So this is the overall preferred plan. preferred concept that we've developed based off of those 2019 recommendations. There's 3 main areas of the project site. The kind of the neighborhood central area is what we're calling the pool area. Then there's kind of the connection between the upper and lower park, which we're calling the clearing. And then there's what we call kind of the panhandle area, the northwest corner of the park is kind of a garden area. So zooming in on those items, we've got an upgraded wading pool. Right now there's a fairly thin band of concrete to kind of hang out on while kids or others play in the wading pool. It's not really conducive to kind of hanging out and having fun, so we want to kind of expand that area, offer more shade, more spots to relax and enjoy the pool. And then there's an upgraded, a little bit of expanded play area, utilizing the existing container, one of the existing containers, and then expanding kind of down the hillside and utilizing the hillside to create kind of a fun, multi-level experiential play area with kind of a mounded area, a slide down the hill, some balance features, and some netting, things that kind of resemble kind of fun nature play stuff. And then as that trail, or as that play area kind of goes down the hill, it links into kind of that clearing area that is kind of halfway down the bluff, and I'll get to that in just a sec. The other item to the left-hand side of the screen, there's a new picnic shelter proposed, as well as a new ADA accessible pathway down the slope there, the kind of the curvilinear pathway down to the play area and the pool area. And then sand volleyball gets installed kind of in a flat open area next to the picnic shelter to kind of give a nice relationship between the two. And the picnic shelter is kind of cool. It's sitting up on a hillside. If caregivers or mom or dad are hanging out there, they could see the kids playing at the playground or playing at the basketball hoops or the sand volleyball courts. And then the clearing that I was talking about, kind of halfway down that slope, you can kind of see the historic kind of staircase here. You can see my marker there. And then there's an existing trail that's kind of degraded coming down the slope. And then this area here is kind of a flat open area in between the kind of cliffs of the bluff. Used to be an old quarry. And so we're proposing to install kind of a halfway point or hangout spot to really activate the space. It is well hidden, well, not really well hidden, but it is kind of tucked away, I would say. So we'd like to be able to activate that space, create positive uses there. Some of the uses that we have are basically just kind of plantings and then a trail through the plantings with hammock posts for throwing up a hammock and then some picnicking. Kind of a neat space. And then the kind of the panhandle, the garden space on the northwest corner of the site. This kind of abuts the bluff there in the green. And what we're proposing there is a new trail that goes through a prairie area, or more like a savanna area, natural planting area. So we're converting maybe an acre and a half, maybe a little bit more or less an acre, of turf grass into native prairie, which will help kind of tie in a little bit more habitat to this space. And then along that trail, there's some kind of rest stops for picnicking and for overlooks over the bluff. And in the far corner there on the left side, we've got community gardens that we're going to be working through to basically allow people to do some gardening there. The overlooks and near their clearing area, it may look like we'd be cutting down trees. We're not going to be cutting down trees. It's really doing some selective trimming of those trees and then removal of the invasive buckthorn, which is really clogging up the views and making it feel like the two parks are disconnected. So as we remove that buckthorn, we would be looking at stabilizing that slope so it reduces erosion. It's very likely some of the buckthorn is actually holding some of the slope in, so we want to kind of mitigate that. And so kind of back to that's kind of the plan. I just wanted to address the comment about the pickleball courts because I think it is kind of important to kind of think about this. If there is a desire for pickleball courts, I believe it'll be fairly easy to fit 2, if not 3, striped courts on one of the basketball courts or the existing basketball court, so that folks can bring in, portable nets and rackets and such to play on the basketball court. The budget for the project, we've got about $1.7 million of total funding and about $1.48 million in construction dollars that are available for construction. The majority of the work replaces and updates existing elements. However, some elements that may be added will require additional maintenance, such as the one additional basketball court. The sand volleyball courts are extra things that we'd be maintaining. The picnic shelter would be something new that we'd be maintaining, as well as several new picnic tables and the prairie area. And some of those might not be paid for just because of the limited budget. On the right-hand side of the screen, we've got the total cost for kind of all the elements. The left-hand column there is kind of a suggested base bid items. We'll have to do a little bit of value design and kind of reducing some of the costs to meet the budget, but we feel that we can fairly easily do that just by kind of shrinking things up just a little bit to meet that $1.48 million budget. And that's what I've got. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So we still have a few minutes before the public hearing, so maybe I'll just ask commissioners if you have any questions for Tyler right now? Yes?
Do we have to move the resolution first?
Oh, in order to have, well, I don't want to move the resolution because we haven't held the
I
public
think we
hearing.
can move the resolution and then still open the public hearing.
Okay, all right.
Since I have my mic is on.
Yes,
would
please
you-
go ahead.
Thank you, Co-Chair Alper. So I'd like to move Resolution 2023-26, a resolution approving the preferred concept plan for Riverside Park within the Mississippi Gorge Regional Park.
All right, thank you. Is there any discussion on that? And I will go back to you if you'd like to speak, Co-Chair Abeni.
Thank you. Yes, I have some questions for Mr. Peterson. Just first, I'd like to say thank you for saying value design instead of value engineering. I appreciate that. You mentioned the buckthorn, and you had the graphic that shows the full extents with the panhandle. If you could maybe pop back to that. So the slope is loaded with buckthorn, right? Pretty much? Any of the woods areas that are in situ or?
Yeah, Co-Chair Alper and Abeni. Yeah, for the most part, it's fairly clogged.
Yeah.
In spring and fall, the green that you see that's about 12 feet or less is buckthorn.
Yeah, so, I mean, that would be, I don't know how much you're planning on actually through that whole extent or only in targeted areas removing buckthorn, and are you going to remove it? You're going to be careful of the other vegetation, especially on the slope, right?
Yeah, Co-Chair Abeni and Alper, we will be kind of building a specification package that addresses erosion control. We don't know exactly what that might entail. However, we've got other precedents that we've used at Theodore Park and other parks where we can strategically remove buckthorn from the hillside while also introducing other control methods for erosion.
Okay.
And I would say that
taking out all the buckthorn along those woods would be a very significant effort. And right now, we are focusing the buckthorn removal to kind of the clearing area over here.
Okay. We're getting close. I'll have some more more time after the public hearing, but I'll put in a plug for as much buckthorn removal in the area while we're there doing it as the money allows. So
okay.
If we can come back to me.
Great. Well, we still have another minute, but I think I'll start reading the public hearing rules. So, and then we'll come back to discussion. So thank you all to everyone who would like to share your thoughts and ideas with us during tonight's public hearing. Before we start, the Planning Committee would like to provide an abbreviated version of the public hearing rules. I have a sign-up list here of individuals who wish to speak. I will be calling from people on the sign-up list only.
When was the sign-up?
And the sign-up list, I have 3 individuals, and given that it's 6:30, I can add you. I'll pass it back to Secretary Ringgold while I'm still reading the rules, since I know you gave it to me at 6:28, so just want to make sure everybody had an opportunity to get on it. This public hearing will have a time allotted by myself and co-chair Abeni. It will be 2 minutes per person. Please watch the timer to be considerate of others here to speak and stay within your allotted time. During the public hearing, public testimony will be given without debate, and only clarifying questions from the board will be allowed. We will not tolerate discriminatory and/or harassing words directed at anyone. So please ensure all comments you make tonight comply with that policy. And just want to bring up one other thing. We do operate by Robert's Rules of Order here at the board, so ceding of time to another person is not allowed. So only those signed up to speak may speak for their own time only, for that allotted amount of time for 2 minutes. We also request, if you're comfortable with it, that each speaker provide his or her name and address. As chair of this meeting, I will call for additional testifiers at the end of the hearing 3 times before the public hearing is closed. So, but I'll plan on working off of the sign-up sheet. Maybe we need to work on that last line there. All right, so I believe we have 5, but let me just read off the first name, and then we'll make sure that, because especially of that additional testifiers at the end of the hearing, we'll make sure that everybody has a chance to speak who's here today. So I'm going to start with Rosemary with 2 minutes. I believe it's Knutson, and then Janet Curiel. And if you're not on the list, so Rosemary and then Janet, and if you didn't make it on, I'll call for additional testifiers. Do not worry at the end. So
Hi,
please,
everybody.
Rosemary, go ahead.
I want to say thank you for all your good work. We have the best park system ever anywhere, and I live across the street from Riverside Park. My address is 2815. I am directly across from the tot lot, and I've been there for a number of years.
You could just make sure you're speaking into the microphone, please.
Oh, yeah, that.
Thanks.
Oh, there you go. And so part of what I see in the summer all the traffic with the families coming and the little ones. And I think there's a definite issue with safety for the children, because if they're in that tot lot and they decide that they want to run out into the street, or if they're getting out of the folks' car and they want to run into the street, I've watched, cars going by too fast. I don't know if there's anything you can do about making that safer. That would be a blessing for everybody. And then we need a parking lot. You know that in the summertime, there's no place to park. If you want to come and bring your kids and go into that, whether it's you want to play tennis, you're, an adult, or you want to bring your kids to play, there's no place to park. It's full all the time. Okay, and then, I wanted to say thank you for preserving the original stairs going down from, those stairs, and I'm into the history. I've been hanging out. I actually, if you know about Bluff Street Park, I was the one who started the whole process of creating that park and saving that bluff. So I've been paying attention for a long time. And those stairs, I understand, were created by the WPA in the 1930s. And so that's like precious. Okay, and then I'm done. Rats.
Thank you. Please feel free to provide any written comments to Tyler, who's the staff on this project.
Okay. Well, and as I say, thank you. And if you can do anything just for this children's safety, that would be a blessing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on to Janet. Please come on up, and if you're comfortable with it, state your name and address for the record.
Janet Curiel. I live at 606 27th Avenue South, across from the park. This came in the mail the other day. Do you love nature? Yes, I do. I love nature. I love the nature in Riverside Park, which is one of the most natural parks in the metro area. There are eagles' nests behind the hospital, hawks, falcons, owls, geese and ducks fly overhead, wild turkeys. Besides the birds, there are squirrels, chipmunks, rabbits, foxes, coyotes, even an occasional deer, and so many more animals that we never even see. Riverside Park is a shared space for birds, animals, trees, and native plants, and lastly, humans. As we humans consider improvements to the natural beauty of the park, let us remember the natural habitat and home of the others who do not have a voice, yet upon their good health rests our own. I envision natural paths winding through native flowers and grasses to support the pollinators, as well as offering visual beauty to the humans. Landscape and bluff habitat ought to be handled with sensitivity and care given to protect the animals living there. Too often, we residents have witnessed lack of regard for nature within the park, such as excessive pruning of young trees and excessive salting of sidewalks around the park. Let's keep Riverside Park as natural as it is so that our children and grandchildren may enjoy it for years to come. I would like to give you each a copy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Janet. Yes, you can provide that to our secretary. All right, next up is Marie. I'm afraid I'm not going to say your name correctly. Marie.
Olaf started?
Yes, come on up.
Olaf? And I actually got myself on the list by mistake. I didn't realize.
Oh, would you like to speak?
Yeah, we'll
if you
just,
would.
because I'm
Okay,
already
please.
standing here.
Yes,
so
please go ahead.
I'm also a Riverside Park resident, and I am going to second what Janet just said. And this is probably the 10th meeting I'm at regarding the park and what is going to happen. And I am always and forever plugging urban wilderness. I cannot say it enough how important that is. And I'm hoping in this process that we do value that. I understand that we want to create amenities for youth and so forth, but I also believe that urban wilderness is a wonderful amenity for them. And so to preserve as much wilderness as we can, that is going to be my forever message. And yeah, I'm pleased that we might have a labyrinth. A good place to meditate in the park, which is another need for all of us to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Next up is Polly Volmar Haywood, and then Marjorie Webner.
Hi, I'm Polly Volmar Haywood, and I live on the park. Like most people in Riverside Park, there are a few that don't. 2627 South 8th Street. I had no idea that I was going to be speaking extemporaneously. I thought it was a conversation we were going to have. But I have looked at the plans, and I did attend the comment meeting. So there are a few things I don't understand. I hope the historic staircase will be renovated. It sounded from what was said at the meeting that perhaps it was too expensive to restore it to its previous quality, although there is stone all over the place that can be used. I mean, it's right there. So I don't know if you are planning on doing a cement staircase, but at any rate, whatever, it needs to be redone. It's like a waterfall right now, as you can imagine, with the ice and everything. You can't walk there. I'm not sure about this extra basketball court. Nobody that I know of wanted more basketball court. There is basketball court that is not, it's used, but not extensively. So that's a question. I looked at the map, which is not there now, but and the legend is kind of unclear. The colors for the different surfacings are very similar. They're all kind of tan and green and light green. So it's hard to tell, but it kind of looked like they were going to put something else in the sandbox other than sand. Whoops, am I done? I have a lot of other things to say, but, it's up to you.
Yeah, that's the end of the 2 minutes, but I would encourage you to speak directly with Tyler, who's behind
Okay,
you, and provide your
yeah.
comments to
Right.
staff.
Permeable paving, not
Great.
cement.
Thank you. Next up is Marjorie.
Greetings. I live on 6th Street, 2609 South 6th Street, on the long leg of the park near the hospital. And I'm just going to reiterate the same things. We want that historic side, that walkway down to the park restored from the WPA. And because we're a wildlife corridor, right, because of the river there, wildlife is also important to us, that it's not too manicured, that there's a wildness to the area. And I'm curious about the old building near the pool, if it's going to be rehabbed as well and what it might be used for, because it's also an old historic building. And I'm really happy about the buckthorn reduction. I'm a bird watcher, so I'm also interested in, like I said, not just clearing out all the dead wood. We've got lots of woodpeckers, pileated woodpeckers there. So curious about any ideas of a parking lot. Because of the hospitals and people parking, we have restricted parking there, as you know, because residents can't find a place to park. If there's any other solution for that, that would be great. There's not enough meter monitor people coming by. People just get away with all kinds of stuff over there. You can make a lot of money on people illegally parking. So I'm also really wanting the idea of permeable surfaces, because we get a lot of water there that's going to go into the river. We're right next to the Mississippi River, so any kind of protection around drainage for the park would be really important as well. So I don't have a lot of different things to say, but as a resident on the park for 35 years, we love this park. We love the wildness of it. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. So if you're not on my list, don't despair. Any additional testifiers? Any additional testifiers? Any additional testifiers? Yes, okay, come on up. Please state your name and address for the record, and go ahead with your 2 minutes.
Wow, this is very intimidating right now. My wife, she gave me a couple things to say, and she had asked that our park playground, she says it's in good shape with a lot of good things for both little and big kids. And it says, I don't think much should be changed. Please keep the sand. The kids love digging in it. Pool is the big improvement that could be made. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, any additional testifiers after that? Any additional testifiers? Any additional testifiers? All right, with that, I will close the public hearing. Thank you all for coming and for your comments. So I'd like to go back to discussion from that we were having on the resolution and go back to Co-Chair Benny. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Co-Chair Alper, and I'll be brief. But we heard about the buckthorn a little bit and the wildness, and I support that. And I support the idea of a targeted approach to any kind of clearing, because it is a habitat issue for sure. So I don't think we need to. And I also think that if we clear buckthorn though, just in the center, it's going to come back. So it might make sense to see if the budget affords something bigger along that span. And also that would help with visibility down to the lower ends of the park as well. Okay. And then the only other comment I had, and I wrote these notes a couple of days ago, but you were noting that in the materials we saw that there were new assets that will require maintenance. That was how it was worded, and I really appreciated that, but including the 1.5 acres of prairie. And I think it's really nice to point that out, because I think a lot of people think that, when you convert to prairie, that it is less maintenance intensive than turf. But I don't believe that's the case. I think there's an establishment period, and I think it does take some care. So I just really appreciated that, and that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Great. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Co-Chair Alper. Thank you to everyone who spoke. You, in many ways, articulated better than I could a lot of my questions about this park. As a Minneapolis kid, growing up, anything that was WPA was like, I would call it the ruins of Numenor. That's a dorky joke, but there it is. It was like the one thing we had going for us. So I am curious about the old amenities, the assets, the 90-year-old pool, the old building, the stairs that people had talked about. Do we have plans for that? What are the plans for that? We talk about budget, but we're just adding a lot of stuff. Any comments on that, where I'll start?
Sure. Chair Alfer and Commissioner Thompson, all good thoughts. So the pool being 91 years old, we did an assessment of it. We have a couple different options for that pool. One of them's kind of a do nothing for now option and push the problem down the road later. Our plumbers were successful in relining the main drain that had broken. It's an old cast iron pipe that's 90 years old, buried in the ground. It's in bad shape. So they relined that. They were able to get it working by about June or so of this last summer, after some time of not working at all. So the pool is functional. So there is the do nothing option and keep it functioning kind of on life supports, if you will. There's also kind of a replace the pool mechanicals and the pipes that lead up to the edges of the pool. That's about a $350,000 project. And that is made a little bit less expensive just because the pool mechanicals are in a building that would facilitate the new mechanicals. We wouldn't have to build a separate pool or a separate maintenance or a separate mechanical building for the pool, or a separate mechanical vault underground for the pool. So we can save some money just using the existing building. The third option would be the full replacement, which is of the pool and the mechanicals, not including the decking and the fencing around the pool. That'd be about $500,000, which is still significantly less than other wading pool projects, just because we're not having to build more infrastructure items. So the pool it seems like we've got a good path forward there to kind of make something really cool there. The building, I can say just a few things about that real quick. It is a gorgeous building. It's got a nice curve to it that wraps around the pool. On either end are a ladies' and men's restroom. And in the middle, between the two restrooms, is just the mechanical space. The issue with the restrooms is that there's 2 steps up into the restroom, and then inside the restroom, a few steps, there's another step to get it to where the surface is for using the facility. So to actually create an ADA accessible space there, we would likely have to remove the entire floor, raise the ground outside of the building up a little bit, and the ground or the floor in the building down. It's a significant effort. And beyond that, there are woodpecker holes in the wall. There's rotten boards. It is kind of a 1930s era timber building. I wouldn't say post and timber, but a wood framed building with cedar shakes on it and things like that. So it is not an inexpensive endeavor to start fixing that thing. The steps and the other WPA era items, we've got some regional park funding. Between other projects and that project, it would take a significant sum of money to basically replace the stairs. We likely wouldn't put in a new concrete stairs and totally rip the other ones out. I think the more prudent thing, and what would be more acceptable to the public and others, is to replace them as if they were put in new in 1930. I think we might have to do some accessibility improvements to it, like a handrail, that type of thing. That would not be what was originally put in, perhaps. And we'd have to have discussions with likely City Heritage Preservation Commission staff, as well as SHPO staff. They'd probably like to weigh in on what that final design is, or what it would look like afterwards. A similar process took place just upstream of here after the slope failure with the WPA wall that had been washed away with that.
That leads me to a question that was not on my list, but do you know as I'm staring at the map, the delineation between the neighborhood park and the regional space, because it does all kind of flow in one to the next, and I know that sometimes people don't know, I don't know on this one, the dividing line.
Chair Alper and Commissioner Thompson, I don't know if there is like a Riverside Park boundary other than, what the neighbors or people who have been there for a long time might assume it to be. There's really no line on a map that I know of. But I think what we have here is parcels of land that make up Riverside Park, which acts as a neighborhood park, although it is technically a regional park.
Okay, thank you. I do have a couple of other questions about the nuts and bolts of the plan. You said activate a space that was quiet. I'm curious as to it seems to be almost an ideological framework that quiet spaces in our parks right now are all wanting to be activated. I'm just curious the thinking behind that. I'm a person who likes the quiet spaces, but I'm curious the thinking behind it.
Yeah, Chair Alper, Commissioner Thompson. I think when I said activate, I meant activate it in a quiet way. Activate it with people doing quiet things.
Okay.
So you're in the regional park planning, we had kind of scoped out a nature play area that was, basically just wood balance beams and things like that. Not your typical traditional nature play that we might be building further on the upper side of the park. We decided, since the slope down was not accessible and it would require a 750-foot long ramp, which is really infeasible and very expensive, we decided to just make it kind of interstitial space where people can kind of hang out, read a book, bird watch, I bet the spring bird watching there is phenomenal, with the tall trees and kind of the unkempt woods and down trees and various habitats. So really that space is for relaxing. It provides a use that's really not there now, and tends to activate the space in a way that pushes out possibly, negative uses.
Somebody got raped there.
Anything further,
I do
Commissioner
have one
Thompson?
more question, yes,
Okay,
thank
go
you.
ahead.
I just want to make sure I heard this right. So this is totally on a totally different topic except for still the park. Gardening in the parkland, did I hear that correctly? And have we done that anywhere else? I know there are a ton of community gardens. We've heard a lot about the Sioux Line Community Garden down by the, there, thank you. Have we done this in a neighborhood or regional park before? Neighborhood gardening, like community gardens?
Chair Alper, Commissioner Thompson, I don't know too much about, I know several community gardens, but I'm not sure who runs them or if they're run by separate organizations or whatnot.
If I may pop in here as co-chair, and I guess I'd like to invite perhaps Superintendent Bancourt to respond, because I know that we have several community gardens, or whoever you would like to invite up to the podium just to speak to that, because we have several community gardens I know within South Minneapolis, located within our park system, and ones that we're in the process of building, or that are going to come online in 2023, like PV Park, like the CPRO site, which is still unnamed, things like that. And I'm sure, please, Michael Schroeder.
Chair Alper, you're correct. A few years ago, we completed an urban ag study that had been going on for several years, and it recommended forming community gardens in certain parks. So we highlighted where those would be. Right now, that program is run by Kate Ryan, our horticulturist, and we have community gardens in several parks. You mentioned some, Towerside Park, and we continue to do that. I think it was maybe 3 years ago, we allocated dollars in the CIP to be incrementally implementing those in certain parks across the system. So we do have community gardens across the system in our parks. And there are requirements for how they participate. It's different than Sioux Line Gardens, which was kind of grandfathered into our system. Ms. Ryan runs those very carefully in trying to make certain that there's turnover in gardeners and that there is a requirement for actually a true community accessible food grown in that space.
Okay, thank you. How that is operated is, knowing that it's already in our system beyond Sioux Line is probably good for me to know. Just a host of questions like populate behind my ears, because I think, oh, well, that's a lot of maintenance and community engagement that I just wanted to make sure we were already on board with that. I guess that is my final question of my messy notes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Olson, you have your light on?
Yeah. So there's talk. I do appreciate the second court, basketball court, using the old volleyball space, and there's talks of creating a shared space with pickleball, which on the surface I do like, but I am wondering, this is a general question, throughout our system, do we have many shared pickleball spaces at this point? I know we've kind of discussed a few of them, but right now, do we have a few?
Chair Alper, Commissioner Olson, we do have pickleball in shared courts, and it's with tennis courts, and they're lined up with the net, so you'd use the net, but you'd use the same net, I believe, but then you'd use the pickleball, the much smaller. It's got to be a quarter the size space or striping for pickleball.
Okay. Yeah, so in that case, because we haven't really had one with basketball, I think it would maybe a good idea to pursue that. I do think maybe there would be some conflict or whatever, but I think it's still a good idea to pursue, and we can learn from that. And one quick question around the steps. Do you know if historic preservation funds or legacy funds would be able to be made use of? Would it rise to that level?
Chair Alper, Commissioner Olson, I don't fully know how we might fund it, other than us pursuing new funds for it. I think maybe Assistant Superintendent Schroeder might be able to add a little bit more.
Chair Alper, Commissioner Olson, I think your question is a really good one, because we don't have a great source for restoring historic resources, whether they be buildings or walls or stairs across the system. We have in the last several years been trying to better document where they exist and what the conditions are. And I think our best resource is to pursue some outside funds when we actually put the final package together, so that we can begin possibly getting on the legislative agenda, so we can begin looking at places where there's significant areas of potential failure, like around Minneapolis Falls. This is a good example, and there are others throughout the system that could really afford some attention.
Okay. Yeah, and then that'd be great, and especially if we could even keep more of these buildings as we make them ADA accessible and bring them up to our modern standards. So, thank you.
Commissioner Schaefer?
I just have a quick question around the detail of the hammocks. From what I'm reading on the map, and I may be reading it incorrectly, it seems like they are not in the shade and that they may be in a path.
Chair Alper and Commissioner Schaefer, I can assure you they'll be shaded.
Oh, they are. Okay. All right. Well,
it's the drawing shows it doesn't quite show the extent of the canopy above the cliff here. So there's this kind of zigzaggy whitish line is basically a sheer limestone cliff, probably 20, 25 feet tall, and then there's a hill on top of that that goes up to the park. So being on basically the north side, especially in the from noon to the afternoon and evening times, it'll be basically fully shaded. And then the path is really just kind of a mown surface through, or an aggregate surface through kind of a naturalized planting. Right now, there's kind of junky weeds, excuse the expression, but it would be cleaned up and kind of rejuvenated and have these kind of organic amoeba-like pathways through, kind of linking into these larger areas that would have a post of some sort, whether they're wood or steel or something, to hold up a hammock where the hammock is not hanging on a tree. And then I should note that kind of amoeba-like shaped trail isn't the only trail. There's a trail on the outside edge, so folks can walk around those.
great. Thank you for that clarification. And just from an outsider perspective, we just want to make sure people will use it if we're going to install that. And maybe there's examples you can look to where, you know, people make it attractive. But if it seems a little artificial to me, that's all. But I understand the thought process.
Sure.
Great. I'd like to I have a couple questions and comments. This is a park that's really close to where I live, and I'm really excited to see the improvements happen here, both some of the stuff and also the environmental improvements that are going to happen through this process. I just wanted to mention a couple things and just reiterate a couple points I think you were trying to make. The pool. Can a pool, like a completely redoing a pool, Tyler, can completely consume a plan improvement budget, right? So this was a real win to be able to line the pipe and get it functional, and, right? Did I get it right?
Chair Alper, yes,
Yeah.
it is a temporary win to reline
Temporary
the pipe
win.
and get it moving. You know, when a pipe is relined, it's got basically like a epoxy coating, a resin that impregnates kind of a mesh matrix.
Yep.
And it's solid, but it's not like as solid as it could be. So any shifting in the ground can interrupt or break through that pipe. It's a small pipe. It's not a huge pipe.
Absolutely. And I have to say, I've had my fair share of plumbing issues this week, and so I don't know only too well about a little bit more than I want to about plumbing. But I just do want to really emphasize that to you, that the pool is now functional, that we're able to use this budget for some other aspects, which are, I think, really advantageous to the neighborhood and get the most bang for the buck for this funding. And the WPA steps, there was a piece about it in our resolution, and people spoke to it tonight, and I know commissioners were interested in it. It sounded like there's some other potential funding that will, right? That based on what I read in the resolution, unless I read the wrong thing.
Yeah.
That for construction in 2023 with maybe?
Yeah,
It's already 2023.
Yeah, Chair Elper, yes, it is 2023. We do have a little over $1 million of regional park funds. That covers the entire regional park, and there's a few other projects that will be utilizing that funding source. One of them is the soon-to-be new Savannah at Bohemian Flats. We've got a grant for about $286,000 for that. However, that only covers plant material and moving dirt around and things like that. It doesn't cover some of the other things that we want to do there to protect the site. So this regional park grant money or funding will support benches and a couple picnic tables and a fence around the forestry nursery site, things like that. So it'll go towards that. A portion of it will go towards the Lake Street river access point, also an element of this of the 2019 planning effort to basically install a new river access point just on the south side of Lake Street. And we got about a $20,000 National Park supported grant for that project. And we would be matching funds to install that project. A colleague of mine is working on that right now. And then a portion of the work that was done a year ago at about 26th and West River Parkway, a portion of that has failed. So we're working on a solution to that, which will take up a little bit more of that money. The remaining funds could come to Riverside Park to help support or offset the 1.48 million, so we could actually add to that amount and add more things to the park. And then probably a final use of that money might look at, as Michael kind of had alluded to, documenting and studying the WPA era elements in this park and along the West River Parkway.
Great. So in short, there's more happening within the Mississippi Gorge Regional Park, and I personally would encourage all of you out here listening today to stay in touch with Tyler about this, about improvements, and to stay informed about when you can get involved. And I had one other thing. I just wanted to ask about sand. Will there remain sand play areas within the park?
Chair Alpert, good question. I should have clarified. I'd mentioned that sand is not our normal thing anymore, our standard. It is to have. We can definitely have sand play area. We just don't want to use sand as a fall zone material. In the winter, it freezes solid, and nobody likes falling on ice. And in the summer, it creates weeds and other things. So certainly, we will have a sand play element in this park.
Okay. I'm going to recognize Commissioner Musich at this point.
Thank you, Chair Alper. So I would assume that the material that's going to be utilized instead of sand would be the engineered wood fibers that we're using in other play locations. Is that correct?
Chair Alper, Commissioner Musich, that is correct. The majority of the play infill material will be an appropriate depth of engineered wood fiber mulch that is specifically created and made for playgrounds. The mulch is it's a hardwood product. It freely drains, so there's no need for it's not an impervious surface, so it freely drains. And then in a few spaces, we're likely to have some poured in place or other type of accessible way into the containers and up to the swing set or the tower area where someone could wheel or walk their way across a safe surface to those play elements.
Great. So thank you for touching upon the ADA component of this as well. Sand is not an ADA element, and so people that are wheeling or using a walker to move through that space, they get bogged down, they can't use it. So in addition to the other benefits that the engineered wood fiber has, it also makes these playgrounds more accessible for people that have mobility issues to utilize them. So I appreciate that we are taking those steps to make our play spaces more accessible to everyone that wants to use them. Thank you for giving us that additional context around this particular element of the design.
Any further comments? I'm not seeing any lights, so thank you for the presentation, and I would entertain a motion at this time. Oh, I already have a motion, right? Thank you. All right, I'd like to, let me go forth. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. So moving along, can I get a motion for Resolution 2023-9?
I'll move Resolution 2023-9, a resolution approving encroachment permit for use of 10 square feet of land in front of the subject property at 1925 East River Parkway, encroaching upon parkland at East River Parkway within Mississippi Gorge Regional Park, and collection of appropriate fees associated with this encroachment.
All right, any discussion? Let's do Commissioner Thompson, then a Benny, then Menz, then usage.
Thank you so much, Co-Chair Alper. I would like to, in general, better understand what this project truly means. The stormwater, the sump pump, I'm understanding that this is a first of its kind of thing, and I was not seeing a map of the engineering of what was requested. Can anyone speak toward that?
Chair Alper and Commissioner Thompson, I'm sorry. I have a brief presentation if that might help. I'm not certain that it will answer all of your questions. I'm hoping it will give some kind of light to this. I can find it. Here it is. So, as the resolution had noted, this is for a very small amount of square footage, but it is for a 3-inch PVC pipe that would lead from the subject property to the storm sewer. And I've just put in here an aerial map. It's basically south of Franklin and north of, I think, the Marshall Street Bridge. This is on East River Parkway. And that's just a general idea of where the location is. It's a little closer in. And this is a zoomed in portion of the survey that's provided as one of the attachments. And I don't know if you can see in my cursor here, this line that's running basically vertically is the line that would be running from the property, straight from the property going down and toward the street, crossing parkland, crossing the curb and gutter, and then lining and actually attaching to the city storm sewer. So again, it's a 3-inch PVC pipe. As the application, the applicant has submitted, is to basically take the stormwater from the sump pump, which is from groundwater, of course, and have that discharge into the PVC pipe and basically be connected to the storm sewer from the city.
Do we have any idea of sort of a stormwater or water quality environmental impact this would have?
In terms of the amount, or one of the things that has been done, he's had the testing of the water, and supposedly there's no contaminants of that sort. The city has approved the permit. We did also, I think, in the resolution, there was mention of how we did speak with the city regarding the pipe shed. I'm not an expert on these types of things, and that it wouldn't have any major impact on the pipe shed, where it's, I think, going into the Mississippi River. So on those particular, and those types of factors, there's no major impact. So if that answers your question.
Yes, to a degree. I'm not even quite sure how to frame this question. Has this ever been done before in the city? On parkland?
In my tenure, the only example there would have been, I think, was with Blake School. It was a very unusual situation in which the topography made it so that they are basically backed up to a cliff, all water coming down. They had already tried to mitigate their water and had nowhere else to do it. They'd done all sorts of things to make sure that their water was basically taken care of on their actual property, had run out of all sorts of space on their own property to mitigate the water, and had to then be able to connect to the Storm City sewer. But of course, that's a commercial property. There's a lot of water. Again, their buildings and everything were backed up into a cliff, and their water had nowhere else to go. They didn't have any more property to actually use to use land, of course, to have the water go somewhere else. So that was the only one that I know from my own tenure, and I would also just note from my own research, there are properties that are immediately adjacent to the subject property. We don't have any encroachment permits for their using parkland for the same purposes either.
They're currently using it?
No, we have no knowledge of that.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just, it's very short. I'm just going to go through here, and I'm just showing that this is an aerial of the subject property. And I don't know if this is going to help any other questions that might come. And this is just the street view that's facing south from the subject. And this is facing north. So I don't know if that might help. This is a very short presentation, but
thank you.
there are
Okay.
others.
Thanks. All right. Any further comments?
That's it for now. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Co-Chair Benny?
Okay, yes, thank you, Co-Chair Elper. So, colleagues, my insufferable day job is going to rear its ugly head once again, but I have a few different comments about this. So, the first comment is that my employer owns a property right in this area, and the soils are terrible there. They turned Swiss cheese into a ductile iron fire line, and it's because they just hold water. So one of my initial thoughts was, could this be discharged to the ground? It just sits there. I can see that it would. This is basically shale. This is a clay soil in this area. And you can imagine it's because it's really sort of getting down toward the limestone. It's down toward the river. The other thing is, as Mr. Whitting, said, a lot of people will just put this in a floor drain, and that isn't good. It just actually sends a lot more water to the sewage treatment plant, and it bogs them down. If this is an allowable discharge, so the city's MS4 permit will allow this as a discharge or a connection to the storm sewer system if it's a non-contaminated water, and you drop the name Jeremy Strelo. He's the guy that looks at that. So I'm actually good with that, but I have a couple of things that I guess I wanted to also ask. I also wanted to know if it was possible to know what this was going to cost the homeowner, and maybe Ms. Downey knows, or if you, I don't know if it's appropriate to call the homeowner up for a short answer. Yeah, I think I would be interested to know the cost. Yeah.
Okay, briefly, please come on up and tell us what it will cost.
If you're comfortable with that.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right, and it's going to be, I've already spent about $2,500 to get to this point, and part of the back and forth was, I started with Mr. Strelo. He said, we can do this, it's not commonly done, it's commonly done in St. Paul, but we have parkland. St. Paul, I guess, doesn't have a park board, so anyway, I said, well, I'd like to know, so I got a bid from a contractor, and it was, I think, $9,000. But I also got a bid to do a French drain in my front yard, which was like $6,000. So I thought, well, I'd like to do it the right way and preserve the road, because you're absolutely correct. The soils, I mean, sometimes the sump pumps for the neighbors run a lot, and this is part of the reason why our road is known as the Hubcap Memorial, because the water goes in there, destroys the road. So rather than throw it on the road and have it run to the catch basin and half of it not run to the storm drain, I would just like to bypass that and go right under. So Mr. Strelo has been very helpful. We went through all the processes. We tested the water. That cost over $1,000.
Yeah.
I sent it to different labs, and then by the time I did my surveyor was $1,700. So yeah, I don't want to think about it, because I've spent so much on this at this point.
Yeah.
It's almost like I'd just like to, this is one of my bucket list items now to get this done.
To complete it. So it's going to be a $10,000 to $11,000 project.
Yeah, it's a big ticket. Yeah, and so I don't think you're going to have a problem with everybody on the block saying, "Oh, I want one of these."
No.
It's not, but I think it provides a good option for homeowners if we've tried other things and there's water constantly running in our front yard.
Okay, and so then the other comments, I actually had an exchange with Mr. Schroeder about so that there could maybe be some clarification about if this is issued transfer upon sale, so that the new homeowner knows that they have this as a permit that's revocable, or a license agreement. And then the only other concern, and since you're here, is that if somebody is doing some digging along the parkway there, or something, no one is going to locate this pipe. So in other words, there's the gopher one called locates. The park board will not do a locate on this pipe if somebody's excavating in there, and I don't know that the city would either. So that's just a little bit of a flag to you.
And that makes sense. And I talked about this with Mr. Strelo, and he said that, the city owns the storm sewer, and so they take responsibility. He said just the Minneapolis Park Board treats the land differently than other entities.
And that's true.
If this was on East River Parkway, it would have already been installed.
Well, I want to note the time, and so make sure that Commissioner Benny has the opportunity to speak.
And so I'm just saying, the city won't locate it, and the park board won't locate it. You may want to register the pipe with locates, and then if it's approved. And then the last thing is, there were other encroachments that were identified on the survey. There were the pilasters, there's also the driveway and the sidewalk. Ms. Downey, are any of those under permit currently, and should we just do that at this time? Because I think once you pay the $800 administrative fee, I think that the cost for that additional square footage is less. Would be a better value.
Chair Alper, Co-Chair Alper and Co-Chair Benny, neither of those are encroachments that have been permitted by the board or approved by the board.
Yeah.
Our current practice is that unless there's been substantial modification or substantial modification that's been planned, we don't ask that they become compliant. But if there were to be changes or modifications to the driveway, we then asked the homeowner or the property owner to then become compliant at that time. That's our current policy. Now, that could change with our land policy, as it comes, but that's what our current practice and policy is. So.
Thank you.
You must be an engineer.
Commissioner Menz?
Any questions?
Thank you. So just to give a little background, this is in my district, and Chad and I have talked a couple of times. I even visited the site because it was a very complicated and new encroachment. Thank you to Ms. Downey for really working through this and getting it to the board, because Commissioner Abeni has done exactly what I hoped she would do, which is bring perspective around how this works. So the site is right along, and I want you all to know that I'm not going to bring forward things that are one-offs. I see this as something that potentially has greater impact and could be available to people along East River Parkway, because it is the Hubcap Memorial. There is significant damage that's done to the roadway there, and it's possibly because of this water that sits in people's yards or just goes to the parkway. So I'm always trying to look for things where constituent action can help us even do our job better, and I think we're even paving this part of the parkway very soon. So if there's any way for us to sort of coordinate with the city or figure out if this is something that the storm drain could handle, and that it's a better way for doing our work and, you know, mitigating the parkway having to be repaved all the time. So thank you, Commissioner Abeni, for providing that perspective. And just thank you to Chad for really pushing this forward. He has done a lot to sort of get this to this step. And although we've never done this for this particular space, I don't necessarily think that that should be our way of doing things, that there are things that we might need to do differently in this environment, and maybe some things that make sense. So just wanted to provide that background or perspective from what my experience is working with the homeowner, and also realizing that this whole area has some issues, and maybe this is a way for us to find some longer term solutions.
Commissioner Musich?
Thank you, Co-Chair Alper. I'm not on this committee, so I appreciate being given the opportunity to speak, and I apologize for not providing that disclaimer for my previous comments. So I personally have experienced this condition where you have a sump pump and discharge and damage to your yard. And I resolved that problem by giving up a significant portion of my yard to a rain garden to manage that water on site. Because while our packet on page 3 notes that environmentally the sump pump overflow will increase the volume and rate of discharge through parkland to the Mississippi River, but is a tiny amount compared to the size of the pipe shed as a whole. Every amount of water that we are conveying faster than it naturally would move into our stormwater system is unduly burdening that system that's already undersized for the future rainfall events that our region is going to experience. And what we are doing tonight, should you pass this out of committee, and we will be doing at our next meeting, should it come before the full board and be voted on and approved, is setting a precedent that people can now bypass controlling water on their property and immediately put that into the stormwater system. So should it move forward, I would really like us to put in place policies around demonstrating that property owners, or the property owners would provide evidence that they have tried to manage the water on site before saying, okay, we're going to allow you to do this. Because it's not a best management practice. It's not what we would do should it be our building. We would attempt to try to control it on site, and when that all failed, we would then try to do something like this. And I think we should hold residents to the same standard for water management, because we're all in this together, and we all have a responsibility to ensure that we're not overburdening our storm system during storm events. So I would ask the chairs of this, co-chairs of this committee to talk with staff about how we go about crafting such policy direction for any future considerations like this, should this move out of committee. Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you so much. I would like to echo the concerns of Commissioner Musich and add, I am concerned at the precedent this could set with the entire city. We are the gap between many, many, many homeowners and their storm sewers, based on the fact that we own the parkland that a lot of homes abut next to. We, through many discussions already had at this board, we know that our entire city is built on a wetland. There are flooding everywhere all the time, every spring. And if you're me in my backyard currently, I am very concerned at the precedent this would set. With all due respect to the homeowner and the work that you've done, I respect that this is something many people deal with, if not all of us. So as a board, I just worry, do we know the impact of this one decision should it become a storm, shall I say? That's my caveat. I am not going to be supporting this tonight just for that reason. Thank you.
May I comment again, Commissioner?
No, right now it's discussion with the board members at this point. Commissioner, I don't know who had their light on first. Was it you or you? Oh, Commissioner Menz, go ahead.
Thanks for letting me speak again on this issue. I am not on this committee. I agree that there's always going to be precedent that this board is setting, but I don't want to bring this up, but we agreed, we voted for a plan where we would pump water away from homeowners a couple of months ago, but this could help facilitate water through the storm drain, and maybe it forces the city to do something different with that storm drain. But I would like to strongly disagree that this might set some precedent, but we also set precedent by voting for the Hiawatha Golf Course plan that we are going to remove water from homeowners' homes around that space. And maybe I'm wrong that that's a precedent that we set, but as the primary reason for me not voting for that, this is also, we're setting precedent. We're trying to manage water. We have to work together with the city. This happens down in St. Paul. They are doing that. So I don't understand how we can't change our practice when it might actually improve our water management strategies in the future.
Commissioner Benny.
Yeah, thank you. Well, this is an interesting discussion, and, if we were to establish a policy, it could be something, in addition to water testing, which the city should require, it's their storm sewer, but maybe something about the soils, because these soils you'd not be allowed to even build a rain garden, and you wouldn't be able to try doing infiltration in this area. The soils just are absolutely not appropriate, but you don't have to. Why would you, don't take my word for that. So there would have to be some evidence of that maybe in some future policy. But the other thing is if this home wasn't on the parkway, they'd be doing this. And then, this could be happening. If the city allows it, this would be happening. So it's sort of arbitrary. We're not stopping much. It's just the people that have the good fortune to live on one of our parkways where we're taking kind of, I think, a heavy hand about this allowable stormwater discharge. The state allows this as a discharge. The other thing I'll say is that, I hate to tell you, but commercial properties do this all the time. They have direct connections to storm sewers. They have a large pipe that comes out of the building, and if there's usually foundation drains, if they have any subgrade space, and a sump pump collection, and they're sending water out into the storm sewer all the time. So again, this goal of the city, there's a thing called I&I, or there are consent decrees in other parts of the state, but I&I is inflow and infiltration. The scourge that's been fought against is allowing clear and non-polluted water into the sanitary sewer, water that doesn't need treatment, because it inundates our sanitary sewer, and that's what actually risks sewer overflows to the river if the plant can't keep up. So it's good to get the right water in the right system. So I think this, I think personally, we're making a bit of a bigger deal of this, I think, than we need to. We have utilities that come through our properties. We shouldn't, sort of judge utilities in a sense. We need them. We all rely on them, and they serve the citizens of our city. So I'm totally supporting this. Thanks.
Commissioner Olson?
Yeah, my question is for Councilor Rice. So say we approve this, a couple weeks later, a couple meetings later, someone comes with a similar thing and we deny it. Would we open ourselves up to any sort of suit or anything like that, or because we set a precedent?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Olson, it's possible. I think the discussion has been good, that the board understands what factors may obtain here, and if you think that the conditions are right and you want to approve it, I think it would be advisable to cite things like the condition of the soils, the connection, the mitigation measures that the homeowner might have undertaken, the systems he's setting up, and a bunch of other factors, so that if you do have somebody in a similar circumstance, which would be adjacent to a parkway, possibly evaluate the soil condition, look at the volume, and look at the, the efforts that have been undertaken to do it, it would limit other requests. But I do think, Madam Chair, Commissioner Olson, you've at least touched on a point that would be a factor for you to consider.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I generally think, though, that, kind of slippery slope arguments at the end of the day are typically logical fallacies, and I think that would kind of hold true here as well. I think we can kind of pick and choose based on the factors that we have heard when it's appropriate, and so I'd support this.
Any further discussion? Yes, please go ahead.
And this is something that Council Rice and I have talked a lot about. So when we bring an item like this, an encroachment to you, we look at it in a way, while it's not codified, we look at it very much in the same way that a city would look at a variance, where we're looking to grant some special permissions to a property owner based on the unique conditions of that particular property. So like a variance, we look at each one of these on a de novo basis. Each one is different. Each one is not based on a precedent that was determined before. So there should not be a question of precedence here. And I think that's what Councilor Rice was getting to. At the same time, there are conditions that we look at relative to the park. We look at the safety of park users, the impacts on the park on environmental qualities. Those are criteria that we look at. And we depend on the property owner to tell us what the unique conditions are that would make this acceptable to the Board of Commissioners. I don't think that was done in the application materials. I think the property owner demonstrated a few things tonight in his comments. We don't typically like to have the property owner consuming time here. So we work with the property owner to try to reach those unique conditions that allow the board to be able to make a decision, recognizing that it's not setting a precedence on any particular encroachment issue before you.
Thank you for that explanation and addition. Commissioner Schaefer?
I just want to make one short point in saying that I will be supporting this, because I feel like the way that our community supports our tax base here at the Park Board is really a significant amount of our budget. And when we feel like the homeowner in an individual case, or maybe a smaller caseload, is doing the right thing, and it seems like a reasonable solution for both sides, I feel like we need to support our taxpayers. Thanks.
Okay, seeing no further lights, let's take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion passes. Can I get a motion for the, can somebody move the next resolution, 2023-19?
Sure, I'll move Resolution 2023-19, resolution approving the creation of a parkland development and easement agreement with the Exeter Management for application of the private land maintained for public use. Parkland dedication option to a proposed development at 1500, 1516, and part of 1600 Marshall Street Northeast in the Sheridan neighborhood of Minneapolis in order to provide a connection between streets in the East Bank Trail within Above the Falls Regional Park.
Thank you. Would anybody like a presentation, commissioners? Is there any discussion? Otherwise, we can go directly to a vote if there's no interest in a presentation.
I would like to see a brief
Okay, let's do
map.
it. All right. I'd like to invite the staff up here.
All right, good evening again, co-chairs Alper and Benny and the Planning Committee. Thanks for hearing this tonight. We are bringing forward a resolution to enter into the process of creating an agreement with Exeter for parkland dedication. The applicant has submitted a land in lieu dedication proposal in writing. The request has described the overall project and the land proposed to be conveyed or eased to the Park Board. The land in lieu request has been reviewed by Park Board planning staff and Commissioner Mentz, which is one of the sort of steps in the procedures for the parkland dedication, land in lieu or private land for public use. And then based on this discussion, we do recommend to work to take the next steps in creating an agreement with the applicant, which is Exeter, and they're here tonight. That you can answer questions on the specific development if there are any. But basically, this is it's a great sort of new trail connection along the southern edge of a new proposed development that's mixed use sort of housing and commercial right along the river, that will connect Marshall Street Northeast to the East Bank Trail in a place that we do not currently have a connection. They've received support from the Planning Commission, are working toward a vacation of an actual street right-of-way in this location. They would, in the agreement, will outline all of the terms for sort of ongoing maintenance, which would include things like plowing and mowing. And they've agreed to those specific elements of operating the trail long-term for us. So they'll even be building out a segment of trail that crosses Park Board land. You can see kind of outside of the red etched boundary there. So they'll be constructing and maintaining that small link as well, which is great. So it's, it is outside of downtown, and that means the 25% of the valuation of the park dedication fees do need to come in cash as well. So there's both this dedication, an easement, and then also some cash that will accompany the park dedication in this instance.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any lights. I guess I would just like to make sure that of one point. My understanding is that this is authorizing staff to enter into an agreement, and that we'll ultimately approve that agreement at a later date. Is that right?
Co-Chair Alper, that's exactly correct. Yes.
Great. Anything else from other staff? All right. Seeing no lights, let's take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes. On to the next item, a staff presentation on the timelines process, community engagement, and proposed design for the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board plan for Cedar Lake and Lake of the Isles.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. For those that I haven't met before, my name's Emma Pachuta, and I'm going to be giving a presentation, as Co-Chair Albert just said, on the Cedar Lake and Lake of the Isles Draft Park Plan that is currently out for a 45-day public comment period. I'm going to do my very best to walk through this presentation quickly, but I do also want to make sure that you feel grounded in the process and some of the decisions that went into the document ahead of voting to adopt it later this spring. So the majority of the Cedar Isles project area sits within the Minneapolis Chain of Lakes Regional Park. The Chain of Lakes includes Brownie Lake to the north and Bedame-Makaska and Lake Harriet to the south. This is the last regional park area that needs a plan within our system. Unlike neighborhood parks, regional parks are intended to be the state parks for Minnesota, so they serve both a local and a statewide audience. The Park Board cannot receive regional funding without an adopted park plan and must also meet the Met Council's 2040 regional park requirements. The plan will also be brought to the Met Council for approval following MPRB adoption. The Cedar Isles Plan also speaks to other MPRB plans. Umbrella documents such as the Comp Plan and the Ecological System Plan give policy direction to the Park Board system. The Cedar Isles Plan provides policy and design for that portion of the park system under these system-wide policies. The Park Plan can also provide direction for plans like the Technical Management Plan. So this process has taken almost 3.5 years, which is much longer than an average planning process. In 2020, as you all know, the city faced a racial reckoning due to the murder of George Floyd, as well as impacts from COVID-19. Planning processes already struggle to elevate underrepresented voices, and so these circumstances compounded that difficulty that staff already face. Our extended timeline speaks to how we continued to try and bring different voices into the process through those challenges. Excuse me. So I just want to give props also to the Community Advisory Committee, community members, and organizations who were able to stay engaged with MPRB through these last several years. It's been 3.5 years. So staff used a number of different approaches to engage the public. We partnered with several local, city, and cultural organizations to reach broader audiences. Engagement began as completely virtual, again because of COVID, and then it adapted and pivoted based on health guidelines, and we were able to end the process with in-person meetings. The most high-profile committee and the one with the most influence is the Community Advisory Committee, or CAC. The CAC consists of 17 community representatives, 1 appointed by each commissioner, and then 8 from a selection committee. The CAC is tasked with becoming informed on the issues and representing all perspectives that they hear from the community during the process. They attended over 20 meetings. Many of them also showed up at several different events and site tours. They were a very engaged cohort of folks, and again, I just thank them for their time and expertise that they lent to this project. Ultimately, the CAC made a unanimous recommendation on the draft plan, so the design shared with you tonight is part of those recommendations. There are a couple items that were not included in the unanimous vote, and I will make sure to highlight those as well. So there were a number of items that we had general consensus from the community on. That included addressing water quality and improving habitat, to retain some lawn for informal gathering, majority at Lake of the Isles, and also a support for the existing circulation network and amenities that exist in this park land as well. There were also a number of hot topic items that were discussed in length during the process. This often meant that there was not consensus, and many people had a lot of different opposing ideas of what the design should be. So I will share further context about how some of those decisions came to be in the final plan tonight. Additionally, Section 5.3 in the document outlines high-level policy guidance that will impact and inform the design and implementation of the plan, but I'm not going to go over a number of these this evening. So first, water quality rose as a top concern and has been inherently embedded into the design and policy guidance within the plan. The guidance from the CAC has been broken into 3 scales: the lake, park plan, and watershed scale. So the document outlines recommendations for all 3 scales, but again, I will be talking about the park plan design. So first, one of the goals was to address all stormwater runoff from hard surfaces within parkland. So the design does do that. It also addresses a number of watershed pipes as well. Some of the ways that we've done that is to improve and retrofit what's already there. So that includes wetlands, marshlands, as well as shoreline plantings. We've also proposed to expand the shoreline and littoral edge around both lakes. So that's kind of the blue-green colors that you see around both of those lakes. We've also proposed a number of parkway treatments. That includes rain gardens that are in orange, tree trenches in pink, as well as a few underground parkway treatments that are the black lines on this map. Another way to address water quality is to remove erosion around the shoreline. So this plan also, this plan also formalizes water access points, which are the blue triangles on this map. Along with these formal access spots, we've also proposed to retain the floating dock that was proposed at the South Cedar Beach Plan from 2017. We've also added a new dock at Lake of the Isles on the eastern side, thinking about the population and sort of the density that's coming from the east side of the city. Along with that, there's a number of restoration of natural areas in this plan. That includes the Cedar Lake Regional Trail, Prairie, also the forest area around Cedar Lake, and the southern portion of Isles. There's also been a number of pollinator nodes that have been proposed around Dean Parkway and Isles to increase connectivity through the site. One item I'll note, there's a dashed line that is not included in the project area to the right of the forest by Cedar Lake. This plan actually proposes to acquire this land. It's dubbed as the remnant lands by a lot of community members. And so this area, again, the CAC made a recommendation to acquire this land and restore this to a natural area. So looking at access and circulation, I'm going to spend probably most of my time on this because there were a lot of discussions around this. First and foremost, the plan retains all of the existing paved walking and biking connections along with the parkways and parking, along with a number of intersection improvements that are demarked sort of in the blue circles along the parkway. Many of the ad hoc trails that have been created by users over the years have either been removed or formalized as soft surface trails, such as the walking trails on the northeast side of Cedar, or paved, such as the west side of Cedar and the south side of Isles. This plan also proposes widening walking and biking trails in areas where there are current pinch points. One that had the most discussion was the northwest side of Cedar Lake Parkway. So that area we've proposed to widen the walking and biking connections along with adding 2 new viewing spots as well. I already mentioned that we've proposed to formalize the hiking trails in the Northeast Forest. The plan also proposes to add a bicycle forest connection in this area. I will note that this was a tied vote amongst the CAC, so this is not a unanimous decision amongst the CAC members or members of the public. There is a current conflict with uses between hikers and people that bicycle or are looking to mountain bike up to Brownie Lake. So my understanding is that many use this forest as a connection sort of to access those trails north. Some felt that we should not have any bicycling, encourage any bicycling in the forest area, and then others felt that we should support that user group and create that connection for them. So as I mentioned, the design recommendation is to create that connection for them. Again, this isn't a mountain biking trail. This is meant to be a forest connection so that bikers also have a way to enjoy sort of that hiking experience that we are providing through the hiking trails as well. One item that did not end up in the plan was whether to add a path around Cedar Lake. Again, this was a really hot topic. It was discussed in length between our CAC members. There were a number of technical issues that the design team identified. That included the width of parkland in this area. Also, making the connection over the Kenilworth Channel was challenging, again, due to the parkland width, due to the topography, and then also due to the height that was needed to be able to actually create a bridge over that area. So the CAC ultimately recommended to restore that shoreline to habitat, and then once that shoreline is established, to assess the feasibility of being able to add a trail at that time. There's also a new connection between Cedar Lake and Lake of the Isles along the north side of the Kenilworth Channel. This was really well received from the community. There was a lot of support for this. To be able to do that, we've also proposed to acquire one private parcel of land on the north side of the channel that would help us actually complete that public connection. Additional to that, there's also a paved connection up to the Kenilworth Trail from Lake of the Isles. And then a few things to note around Isles. There is two-way bicycling planned through an on-street bike path, so that would maintain the current one-way off-street bike path. This was another item where the community had really differing ideas of what they wanted to see. Some wanted a full-on off-street two-way bike path connection. Others wanted to do nothing new with the plan, and so the CAC again tried to find consensus and made this recommendation to add a bicycle path, and then once the parkway gets reconstructed, at that time to consider whether then to add a two-way off-street bicycle connection. A couple other items I'll note here is that there's a new pedestrian connection up to the Midtown Greenway by the dog park, and then the southeast intersection of the Lake of the Isles Parkway and Bedeh-McCoska Parkway has been reconfigured to a T, so we've actually removed that right-hand turning lane to be able to make it a little easier for walkers and bicycles to get to the park system there. So I've gone over actually a number of these items, so I'll just note a couple of things on the program and amenities map. One thing is that the purple stars are what are identified as welcome entry points. So that's where we anticipate a lot of regional audiences sort of coming into the park. And so we would identify things like wayfinding signage, possibly benches, drinking fountains, bike racks that could go at those locations. Additionally, there are three new picnic locations identified on this plan, one on the west side of Cedar Lake, and then two at Lake of the Isles. The Lake of the Isles picnic areas are coupled with temporary restrooms. So those are located on the northwest corner of Isles by the canoe and dock up there, canoe rack and dock, and then also down by the athletic fields and the dog park. And then just kind of honing in on Cedar Lake East Beach, we've also proposed a permanent restroom at this location, as well as formalizing a concert and sort of programming space. There's a number of programming and events that already happen, and so this ask actually came from the volunteers and the folks that actually already attend a lot of these events. Adding a permanent restroom at Cedar Lake East Beach was also not a unanimous CAC vote. The CAC weighed in, and the majority of CAC members wanted to see a permanent restroom within the project area, but did not identify the location. And so this location was identified based on looking at current visitor numbers and also future projection numbers for visitors, especially with the new Southwest Light Rail line that's coming. We do anticipate that this beach will see new visitors, and so we thought this was a really great place to put that permanent restroom. I know that was a lot of information, so I'm also happy to have conversations with any of you who would like to discuss this plan further, but I will just note that the public comment period closes on March 10th. At that time, staff will tabulate all of the comments that we hear. We will make some modifications to the draft plan as applicable based on the comments. At that point, we will bring this to a public hearing in the Planning Committee. We will present what we've heard from the public, and we will also present on any possible amendments of the draft that the board may want to approve with your vote. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I just want to note a couple things, and then I'll open it up for discussion. My understanding of this is that you'll come back and present the plan again. This was just sort of like a teaser for us and an invitation to, I would say, go in more depth with you between now and the public hearing. And I mean, we can also ask questions, but I just want to encourage commissioners to do that, because there'll be another opportunity that the plan will be coming back. You'll present again on the plan.
Yeah, my understanding is this is sort of to help just kind of let you know what's in the plan. I wanted to share a little bit about some of the decision-making process behind the decision. But yes, Co-Chair Alper, I will be coming back whenever we have that final document and giving a second presentation to you all.
Great. I mean, I'll absolutely open it up for discussion, but I would like to encourage you all to take this time that we know we have to read it and to talk with staff with your questions, just, thinking about trying to keep our meetings shorter. So with that.
I would think
yeah,
it was
go
under
ahead.
15 minutes, too.
No, yeah. Absolutely, I mean, with the discussion. All right, let's go to Commissioner Olson and then Abeni for now.
Yeah, no, I'm going to filibuster till the end of the night. No, no, this is great, and thank you for the explanation. This is very helpful, and I'll certainly be using this opportunity to reach out to constituents and other things. I just want to. This area is my most used area aside from Painter Park, and my wife and our dog Perry. We go to that dog park all the time, and that connection would be so nice because we're always walking along the edge, and it's like, so I just want to say I'm especially enthused about that, but I'll reach out with other comments that I have a ton of them, but thank you for this.
Commissioner Abeni?
Thank you. This is such a dumb comment, but when I was reading the document, I do things online now. If there's any way in the future, it's probably beautiful if it's printed, but it's this big, or I don't know if it was meant to be folded, but in the future, not for this one, but maybe if they could be more in the kind of a portrait, that would fit on screens. I'm sorry.
I will note, so I have heard that feedback already, so
Okay.
thank you for that. There is, underneath that version, there's actually a printable version on the webpage, and that might be easier for you to view.
Thank you. And next I'll be asking for large print. I am the second oldest board member. Okay, thank you.
You're not the only one.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there is a visually impaired tab that can enlarge what you're looking at. Okay, thank you. Because I had that same question.
It is made accessible. It is made fully accessible. Mm-hmm.
I just want to say, point out two things when you're beginning to dig into the plan. I would encourage you to look at the tree diagram on page 152 and 153. This was something that I really appreciated the staff sticking in because it talks about where some of these amenities will need to remove trees and also where the plan is really augmenting and maintaining our current canopy. So it's really a nice overlook as you're looking at the various proposed amenities to be able to then reference and see what, for us as commissioners and the community to get a better feel for what that may look like. And obviously trees change in 20 years, but it's a good feel. So thank you for that. And then also on page 96 and 97, again, this is just me putting a plug in, but there is a map there about all of the volunteer efforts that happen around the lake. And I don't think this was meant to be definitive, or to me, in any case, saying that, the volunteers are, that the park staff are shirking their responsibility or something like that. Absolutely not. This was a way where we could honor and show what some of the volunteers have contributed to this area. And I think it was very helpful to kind of have a sense of perspective in that. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that. And the other thing I just want to briefly mention is this is one of the most visited parks, right, in our whole system, a part of the chain of lakes, not the whole chain of lakes. And I think this is a plan we can be really proud of. I really think the amount of time and energy and effort and collaboration that went through on this plan is something that is really, truly amazing. And Emma really spearheaded that, and I received so many positive comments from the community about Emma's work and her team in this. And so there's going to be, I'm sure there'll be edits and changes or whatever, but I really want to start out with this position of saying the community is thrilled with what this is showing us. Being one of the most visited parks, we're going to have more usage, like you said, with a light rail coming. And so we'll need to keep in mind these priorities, land and water, that have come up from many different constituents as we go through this. But I just wanted to say thank you for their efforts and to point out a couple pages.
Thank you. I know I've got my homework assignment written down. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. I actually was just going to echo what Commissioner Schaefer said. I will dig into this. But I know this was a very intense, and it will probably still have some intensity around this project, but the feedback that I got more than anything was how great you were and everyone that worked, of how much you listened and how much you were willing to try to negotiate things. And so I just wanted to take a moment to thank you and thank the staff who I know probably go through a lot of intense times with community and looking for best answers to bring to us. So this is a process that I've been able to watch over this last year. So thank you, Emma. I just want to take a moment.
Well, with that note, any further discussion, or shall we adjourn on that high note? Let's adjourn. I declare it adjourned. Thank you.
Anybody else want?